All right, I am joined here with Alex Leonidas from Alpha Destiny. I think you recently changed your channel to just Alex Leonidas, right?
That's right. When I hit 300,000 followers, decided it was time for a change. Alpha Destiny is no more, although the soul lives on.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about a bunch of crap. We're going to talk about nutrition, ethics, training, all kinds of shit. And let's start off with a fairly heavy topic, veganism. Um,
Oh yeah.
I've been vegan for 13 years, and I went vegan after I saw Gary Yourofsky's speech. He's a really well-known vegan activist. And after the speech, I just had absolutely no excuse not to be vegan. There was no ethical justification to eat meat or animal products. There was no health reason to eat meat or animal products. There's no environmental benefit to animal products. There was just no reason, if I wanted to be a good person, to keep eating meat. I just couldn't. And since then, I have been vegan, and rest is history. But you have kind of been interested in veganism and the plant-based lifestyle for a bit. I know you I don't know if you went vegan, but you were pretty plant based a while ago, and then you quit, but now you're kind of back on the plant based thing. So have you actually gone vegan now?
Yes, I'm 100% vegan. Have been for the last 9 months. Well, it's going to be in a week. And you can say I was a closeted vegan this entire time.
Okay, sweet.
And I started researching it heavily, I would say around 2016, primarily for health reasons. So plant-based, as you can say. And 2018, I actually did go vegan. And I did that for 6 months. But then I realized I wasn't fully in it. Like I'd really done it for health purposes first. And so when I was presented some deer meat, which I figured would be fair game because my family hunted it, and it's an excuse we tell ourselves, right? But I had that meal, and from there on, I was like, you know what, forget about it. So just it spiraled out of control. I was still at least 80-90% plant based, and I always acknowledged the benefits, and I knew that everything about veganism was correct, morally, health wise, everything. But for some reason, I had this disconnect after having that meal. And this would go on for years. But I exclusively watched vegan channels when I would get health advice. I bought all their books. So I was on the down low, just watching everyone and agreeing constantly, like, yeah, this makes sense. And then I would hear the opposing arguments because I'm a truth seeker. I just want to know everything. And I noticed that, especially in the carnivore community, so many excuses for everything, for all their bad health markers. And it's like on one end, you have evidence that's spanning decades, proving cause and effect on so many occasions. And then you have mechanistic speculations, you know? So it was an easy choice for me in the end. And as of this year, I've gone all the way, and it's been the best decision I ever made. I plan on sticking to this for life. So now it's health and ethics. I would still say health first, but the ethical implications are very important. And I have a very objective take on it because it's not about, of course, when we watch these documentaries, and the ones that really did it for me was Earthlings and Dominion. We watch this, it provokes feelings, right? Because what we see is horrible and it's hard to go back, right? But at the same time, if you can disconnect yourself enough, which I did, you can kind of like not care. But what I realized is that it's not about how we feel. That's completely irrelevant. What's objectively the best thing to do for us, the animals, and the planet? And to that, it is a vegan way of living. And the excuse of just, oh, I'm going to have a couple animal products on holidays or once in a while, does that make it morally justifiable to kill once a year or a couple times a year? And ultimately, we are paying for this with our money. It's like hiring a hitman. And so, me being a logical thinker, it's like I can't have contradictions in my life like that. I can't be looking at all the evidence supporting that a plant-based diet is best. I'm primarily eating that way, but then I'm splurging once in a while on animal products. It's like I don't have it in the house. I would eat it when I would go out, but it never felt right. It's like I know that this is damaging my body, and I could feel the inflammation instantly. You know, especially now that I've gone vegan, man. My my arteries are so supple. I didn't think it was possible to feel this way. I legit feel like I'm 17 years old again, especially my downstairs. It's like I'm 14 in class. You know when you get those random hard-ons? That's what I feel like, bro. So everything has reversed. I think I look younger. I feel better than ever. My strength has been identical. So I've noticed all these amazing benefits, and it's everything that I've gone through is exactly what the evidence says will happen. And then you have the other camp, which is just excuse after excuse after excuse. Oh, I have an autoimmune disorder. Oh, it's because cholesterol is not an independent risk factor for heart disease. It's just the firefighters coming in to eliminate the fire, you know? And it's like, I just couldn't deal with it, bro. I'm like, this is nonsense. And I know I'm rambling all over the place. I'm sure we're going to get more coherent as we go through this, but I just couldn't live with these lies. I couldn't live with the hypocrisy, especially since the evidence was staring at me in the face. It's like, Alexander, you need to do this. If you don't, you know you're making the wrong choice for yourself and the world. So
I
that's
get
kind of
that.
like a rundown.
You use the term objective. What did you mean by objective? Because ethics are subjective inherently. I don't think you can ever determine that something is objectively morally true. I think moral realism is nonsense. But do you mean you're looking at what would benefit sentient beings objectively, like benefit you objectively, benefit animals objectively?
Yes, like all things being equal, what we have the power to do right now in this modern society, what's quote unquote the most logical choice? I mean, I use the word objectively because I do believe it is like there's nothing better, right? But like, what's out of all the available options, what's the best one? How can we vote with our money? And you know, like I'll be honest, I kind of do have like, you may not like this, but I do have a bit of a Randian take when it comes to veganism. You know, I believe that it's not necessarily how we feel, but rather the implications that it has on society as a whole. And so I can be a complete psychopath if I want to. I can have zero empathy whatsoever for the animals. But if my health is benefiting, if the environment is improving, if we can actually eliminate world hunger and all these things that veganism claims to do, then it doesn't matter how I feel. And that's why I use the word objective, because I think it is the best thing to do for everyone if we were all on board. And although I am empathetic towards this, and you know, it's a combination of health and ethics, it's really like the rational reasons. I'm attracted to that aspect of it, you know. And when I would watch your debates and you would put people in their place, it's like that resonates with me. And it's like people, it's not about the activists, it's not about us. It's about the animals and what's right, you know? Although I just contradict myself. When I say it kind of is about us from the health end, but that's like all connected, you know?
I think so these sort of moral principles that we have, they're all based on preferences, and we want what we consider to be the most preferable outcomes. I think that's kind of what you're getting at. And
100%.
I think most of us would see the most preferable outcome being the fewest animals having their rights violated, being abused, murdered, human beings benefiting, lower rates of chronic disease, lower rates of mental health issues like depression, anxiety, living longer, and living better, more enriching lives where we can live alongside animals kind of as guardians or companions rather than abusers or, you know, manipulators or slave owners.
Yes.
And I think when you just envision a world that you really want to see, you just have to use your executive function in your brain and kind of map out how do we get to a world like that? And I don't see how you can get to a world like that without adopting a vegan lifestyle. If
Well, again,
you, yeah, if you keep paying for animals to be abused, you go to McDonald's, eat like crap, you keep supporting these corporations uh, that are just, it's literally a holocaust. Animals are getting put into gas chambers and killed so that you can have a bacon cheeseburger.
yeah,
People are also being damaged by this. We know all the bad health effects of animal products, especially processed food, and we know the environmental outcomes. We're losing so much agricultural space due to animal products. A lot of wildlife is getting destroyed due to the animal agriculture industry. There's global warming, which is very much contributed by the animal agriculture industry. So if we all want a better world where humans and animals are benefiting as much as possible from existing, veganism is definitely the way to go.
it is, and I don't. I think people who say otherwise haven't looked into it hard enough. They have these surface level opinions. They haven't even seen the basic documentaries for one. They haven't looked at any debates, and they just don't know what they're talking about. Because especially those who claim to love animals, it's very hypocritical when you have a pet while at the same time you're paying to eat these sentient beings, and ultimately that's what they are. You
Yeah.
know, so I think there's just this disconnect between like we look at them as food and not as who they are. And although we're not necessarily going to get close to all these animals, what's going on now with industrial agriculture is just it's never been seen before, and I think it's completely barbaric. So why would you? And then when we look at the alternatives, we know that's not sustainable environmentally as well. Like everyone talks about grass-fed beef and all these things, right? But it's like you're still paying for these animals to be killed when it's not necessary. We don't need them to thrive. And you can argue that it's even worse when you actually look at the data. So it's like either way, when you look at, I don't want to say the facts, but when you look at all the abundance of research and information out there, it's like you have to conclude that the world would be better if more people go vegan. And although I acknowledge that that probably will take a very long time and maybe it's unrealistic to a certain extent, we can at least not support that. And we have a choice, you know? Even if others won't, at least we can sleep well at night. And I'll tell you, since going vegan, I sleep amazing. My insomnia is gone. No, but in all honesty, it's nice not having hypocrisy, you know, not having contradictions. It's like, this is my ethical belief and it fits everything. It's like, it's good for, it ticks all these boxes, you know? And the fact that you can feel so good while doing it is incredible.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in the fitness industry who don't really even give veganism a chance.
That's the
I
problem.
I know I debated Mike Israel a while ago, like I think a year
I
or
saw
two
that.
ago. Yeah. He's a smart guy. He knows a lot about training. I think his nutritional knowledge is maybe a bit lacking compared to his training knowledge. Seen him downplay the effects of things like saturated fat and cholesterol. But
Yeah. Saturated fat's the worst.
yeah, it's probably the worst macronutrient for you. And
Yeah.
I was debating him on the ethical principles of veganism, and it was literally like 2 hours of me trying to convince him he'd be okay with killing mentally disabled people, like to justify eating meat. I've seen people like Lean Beef Patty. I think she was taking care of a pig, or she has a pet pig now, something like that. There's videos of her eating bacon.
Yeah.
These people are just massive hypocrites, and it's just confusing to me why nobody just wants to be a better person.
Yeah.
Everyone
Why
is
don't you
so
be
content
nice to
with,
animals?
yeah, everyone is just so content with hypocrisy. They're so complacent. Um, it's just bizarre that nobody ever, takes the time to consider they're not the center of the universe. They're not
Yep.
infinitely valuable. And any kind of pleasure that they could experience from eating meat doesn't justify any kind of wrongdoing that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess
And
that's kind of typical
it
of influencers. They're they tend to be
well,
kind of
look,
selfish jackasses and want attention and crap. So
100%. And I'd say fitness influencers in general are probably not the brightest crowd. In fact, I'm quite disappointed from what I see. And the contradictions are just insane. Like, it blows my mind every day. It's like, again, it goes back to the relatability aspect. Someone has a dog, but they don't want to eat a pig, even though pigs are arguably smarter than dogs, right? So it's like, I'm okay. It's speciesism in a sense, right? I'm okay with not eating this animal, but I'll eat the rest, or I'll eat. I won't eat the mammals, but I'll consume the fish. But it's like, even if we don't relate as much, because it's still irrelevant. Like, do I feel as much empathy towards a fish than a cow? The answer is no, and I'm a vegan saying this, but that doesn't matter. It's like you said, it's not about us. People are so goddamn selfish. I used to go fishing when I was younger. I would never do it again, but not once did I kill the fish and feel anything, But that's irrelevant. I know that it's wrong. It's not good for the ocean. We've already depleted like 90% of it, which is insane. That's happened so quickly in the last couple of decades. And, just leave them alone. And with the mammals, it's like, when you bring up dogs, people get very defensive about that because it challenges their ethical beliefs, but it's a very good comparison. Yeah, I don't know how you can claim to be an animal lover and still eat them. To me, that combination doesn't go right, especially with what we know now. Maybe you could have made that argument 100 years ago when people didn't understand as much and there was no industrial farming, but in this day and age, it's just like, if you're presented arguments that are rational and you're like, yeah, I agree, yeah, 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 and it's like, okay, why don't you go vegan? Oh, I'm thinking about it. Okay, but like, why don't you just do it? Like, why don't you just try it and see what happens? And that's the problem. Guys don't want to try it, especially in this industry. There's this big, like, macho attitude that meat is manly, and when it's not. Killing sentient beings, especially in the way we do it now, is the furthest thing from masculine. We're supposed to be protectors, honorable. And the people who work in these slaughterhouses end up with extreme PTSD, and it's not a natural thing to do. It's not how we, especially when you consider the health outcomes that it causes. So when you just add up all these factors, I just I just don't understand why people are so resilient and why they have such strong opinions about veganism when they haven't done any research into it.
well,
And
yeah, and
off- you know,
like most of these fitness influencers, they won't debate me. I've offered
they're
to
afraid
debate.
to. That's the truth.
Well, yeah, I've offered to debate or even just have discussions with just about everybody. I've reached out to Lean Beef Patty, Revival Fitness, Mario Rios, like big and small channels. And they won't even debate me about like training topics sometimes. But there's,
The problem is, they look at your past, right? Some of the videos you made when you were younger and probably not in the best state mentally, and they try to use that as an ad hominem for everything that you present moving forward, which is pathetic in my opinion, because again, it's not about you as a person, it's about your arguments. So if that's all they have to say, well, oh, he's crazy, I'm not going to talk to him. Oh, he's just seeking attention, whatever. But the thing is, it's like, you're the one who's more vocal about the animals than anyone else. You do have an aggressive take on it. Some might find that extreme, but again, it doesn't matter. So, and I think people have seen your debates and they're afraid. And the only ones who aren't afraid are really fucking smart, like Dr. Mike Israel. And that was a good debate, except, you know, and he acknowledged your position as well. But
He did
where he steered
acknowledge
the
that it was
direction,
a morally
he
superior
did.
position, at
Yeah.
least.
But his defense was, what if you can genetically breed these animals to enjoy suffering and pain and all that? That was like his major argument. And we don't have that situation right now, you know, and that would be a fucked up thing to do if you ask me, right? And even if you could do that, it would still be destructive to our health, you know? So again, that's why all these things are connected. But I think guys are afraid, and when they're pressed and they have to admit that this is the right thing to do, they'll try to avoid admitting this. Like they'll any rationale to avoid saying yes, or you know what, I'm just gonna try this. And that's usually how your debates end. Like, so, which is very telling.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of this, like, masculinity sort of topic, because that seems like a huge barrier, especially for dudes, considering like veganism and shit. What do you think masculinity is? Like,
Well,
it's kind of hard to define, and nobody can really explain it.
it's not really my specialty to talk about this stuff, you know. But I would just see it, first of all, a tough badass that is there for his family, is a protector, honorable. I mean, these are all generic traits that I really don't feel like explaining. We all have our stereotypes, but I would say mostly a tough badass who gets shit done, regardless of how he feels, and wants others to be left off better than initially. You know, like you're an instructor. You're there to serve and, you know, enrich the people around you, not destroy, not take advantage of people when you have the intellectual capabilities of doing so, or you're strong enough to do so. Basically, you have all these great traits about you. You're independent, you're strong, you're intelligent, but you don't abuse your gifts, quote unquote, or what you've worked so hard to build. You just want to share that. You want to give back. And to me, that fits perfectly with what veganism is. You know,
I think when we define terms like masculinity or femininity,
be very
we
vague.
we they're kind of hard to define terms, because masculinity and femininity can mean many different things. They can look a lot of different ways. Like, there are kind of feminine men, and there are very masculine women, but we would still see them as feminine. So there's a bit of an overlap in traits, and you can look at masculine or feminine both positively and negatively. When people think of like a man, okay, like man is strong, can withstand a lot of pressure, can bear like the
Yeah.
world on his shoulders, will move forward, just get shit done. It's kind of what it's kind of some of the things I think of when I think of masculinity. But like, you can look at
Sure.
the amount of people who are in prison. It's mostly men. The amount of people who
Yeah.
are addicted to drugs and alcohol, mostly men. Most like severe forms of spousal abuse are it's men. Um, so there you can either be a good man or a bad man. You can be a good woman or a bad woman. Like, we can think of women as caring, nurturing, loving. We can also think of women as like manipulative, vindictive, backstabbing, bitchy, So I think people shouldn't look at these issues with veganism and animal rights, and whether or not it's like pussy to eat tofu or something, like, oh, men eat meat. They should
Oh,
really push that. They should just really push that all aside. None of this is needed to be masculine or feminine or anything. Do you just want to be a good person or a bad person? It's that simple. And whether you're
Hmm.
good or bad, it makes you no more or less of a man. It just means you're less good or less bad.
Yeah, like there are masculine men who do bad things,
Yeah.
and so we can spin this in many directions, but ultimately the choice, not the animals. Like you can maintain everything about your personality.
Yeah.
Like I'm still I'm a tough guy. I have beliefs that like I don't have the typical vegan personality. I don't even agree with a lot of the political beliefs on that's irrespective of veganism is what I'm saying. I don't lean on one end of the political spectrum is what I'm saying.
Right. You're not like
So it's
left
like
wing
no, I'm
or
far from
like
that.
SJW
I would
progressive at
say I'm
least.
like no, I would say I'm center right if
Okay.
I look at everything. So it's like anyone would look at me and be like, "What? This guy's a vegan?" But yeah, because that has nothing to do with what I choose to
It
eat. And
it says nothing
again,
about
going
your masculinity, your political
nothing, bro.
beliefs. You're still the same person. It's just you're a better person for it.
100%. And the thing about, it's not masculine to eat tofu. I find it laughable that people still mention this, like how you're somehow gonna get bitch tits, right? When that's been disproven on every possible account. If
Yeah.
anything, phytoestrogens, well, it binds to the estrogen receptor and it reduces these so-called feminine aspects,
Yeah.
and it reduces the risk of breast and prostate cancers, as we
Yeah.
see in all these Asian countries. So it's like, and vegans on average have higher testosterone levels than meat eaters, you know? And if you have better blood flow because you're not clogging your arteries with all the saturated fat and you're lowering your biological age, you're slowing down the process, you don't have IGF-1 through the goddamn roof, then you'll be more masculine for longer. So you'll live a longer life with less health issues, lower blood pressure, all these things, and ultimately you can serve the world for longer. So even if you don't care about veganism, maybe there's some other grand objective that you have some other mission, right? Well, if you're around here longer in better health, then you can deliver that message more effectively. So isn't that like the ultimate form of masculinity in a sense?
Yeah. Yeah, Brian Johnson, the longevity expert, he, I'm pretty sure he's an ethical vegan. I know he
He
doesn't
is.
eat any animal products whatsoever, and apparently that's conducive to his whole anti-aging kind of agenda.
Well,
So
look,
if it's
we
working
even
for
saw with the
him, you've basically got the guy who's the Batman of the anti-aging space right now.
that's right, and with the recent twin study, of course, it had its flaws, right? But they did show telomere extension at the
Yeah,
end of the study, and this was after 3 months, which is remarkable. I don't think we've ever seen this before. So imagine people who are doing strict veganism, like real whole food plant based, like Caldwell Esselstyn style. Like what happens when you document them over decades? And well, right now we already see they live to their 90s and beyond. They're doing amazing. But like what happens to the actual telomeres if we study that? I'd be very interested to see, you know?
yeah,
And I can guarantee it's going to do better than some animal based diet.
yeah. And on the nutrition topic, how do you get your protein? So I'm sure a lot of
God
people are
damn.
wondering.
Well, first of all, when people ask me that, it's like, do I look like I'm missing fucking protein? You know? It boggles my mind. But first of all, this whole protein thing is a scam. There's a bunch of meta-analyses coming out, and Dr. Greger has covered this extensively. That shows you don't even need as much as we once thought, even in a bodybuilding context or like a general context. Like for example, they would say for like sedentary people, you need zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. Well, now Dr. Greger's coming out and saying you need even less than that. So a person can get like 50 grams of protein a day and probably be fine. Now, I don't think that's optimal for maximum hypertrophy, reaching your potential, but it's still a hell of a lot lower than you think. And it might even be half. So, for example, last year, I was cutting down for a bodybuilding competition. I got to single digit body fat, and I was consuming about 220 grams of protein a day. Excessive, considering I weighed in at 150 pounds, and I'm 5'5", by the way. And so that's what I thought you had to do. Increase your protein so much more to preserve your lean tissue, especially in single digit. This year, I did another cut. on a 100% plant-based diet, and I tracked everything using the app Macro Factor, and I was only getting 120 grams of protein a day. So not even a gram per pound of body weight. And I saw absolutely zero differences in terms of preservation of size, the strength loss, all that was identical to the letter. And I know because I've been tracking everything that I do for the last decade. It's all documented on YouTube and Instagram. If there's anyone who's like, I'm the science, okay? My shit is everywhere, and there's no difference. And now I'm bulking back up, and again, 120 grams or so, my strength is progressing at the same rate as to when I was consuming animal protein and in far greater quantities. So this 120 grams that I'm getting, even if it's less bioavailable, quote unquote, even if it's below what apparently you should be hitting, somehow the outcomes are the same. And yet, when we look at the new meta-analyses coming out, it seems to match that. So whenever I go through something positive with this plant-based lifestyle, it's like, oh, the evidence says that. You know? So to me, it's... But anyway, going back to what you were saying with the protein, if you eat a variety of whole plant foods, you're going to get your amount without even trying. It's like a joke. Like, how could you not get your protein? That would be my question. Because if you're eating beans every day, as you should, because it's the one food that's really associated with longevity, I believe you get an extra 7 or 8 years of life if you eat them daily. It's, all the centenarians consume them, right?
Yeah.
That's going to help. So if you're having like chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans, and then you have a lot of lentils to go with your meals, and then you have a block of tofu to yourself, you're having TVP mixed in with your rice, all these things, you're already at 100 plus grams of protein without even trying, just eating normally, living your life. And this is not even thinking in a bodybuilding context. And then if you ever require additional protein, literally, you just drink an isolated pea protein or soy protein drink and you're good. You get the remainder, 25 grams or whatever it is. And when you compare that to whey protein, there are no differences. So, and I find it funny how meat eaters, first of all, they're consuming way too much meat that's required. Even if they had a small amount, like 150 grams of whatever, they would already reach what they need in a day for protein, right? But funny how they never mix in beans to go with that, which would actually be healthier and save the money. But anyway, a small amount of meat hits their targets, and yet they still drink whey protein shakes on top of it. And then when a vegan drinks protein shakes, oh, it's because you're drinking the shakes.
Yeah.
It's just, again, the contradictions blow my mind. But in terms of the protein, eat a variety of whole plant foods. Don't follow a hippie diet. Follow an evidence-based diet. If you follow Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, and you're getting maybe 15% fat, 65, 70% carbs, and you fill in the rest with protein, you're gonna be okay. It's a joke. Like, it's such a joke that I can't even believe it.
Yeah, reaching your protein needs as a vegan is extremely easy. If you're focused on strength and hypertrophy, or you're involved in, strength sports, I'd still recommend reaching the 0.75 grams of protein per pound of body weight goal.
I would too.
Yeah.
But can I just cut you off?
Yeah.
I would say, if you're gonna do that, make sure it's based off your lean body mass, because a lot of people have so much body fat.
Yeah.
And they're equating it in the wrong way. So like, if I'm like, we can do the math right now. If I'm 155 pounds, right, that's 7% body fat or whatever, and I do 0.8 grams, that's 124 grams of protein a day. That's what I would need.
Yeah, it's not much.
At single digit. So and if the average man is like 180 pounds times 0.8, again, it's only 144 grams. So we're talking a small amount more, but you have to base it off how lean you are. If you're 20% body fat, you can slash those numbers like crazy. And I think that's where these misconceptions lie.
Yeah, and even if you want to eat more protein, it's still very easy. There's beans, lentils, you can make hummus. Hummus is great. I love hummus.
Oh, yeah.
There's seitan, tofu, tempeh. For those of you who don't know seitan, it's not Satan. It's seitan. It's vital wheat gluten or wheat protein, and it's highly bioavailable, tastes amazing. There's also so many mock meat options now with like Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods, and you can just eat protein, like protein powders, like any other bodybuilder does. Just
Yeah,
it's either soy or pea protein based. So
that's right.
it's extremely easy, and if you look at any of the data, there's no difference between vegans or omnivores in terms of body composition changes from weight training. So there's nothing to be concerned with there. I do want to mention though, I don't really trust Michael Greger as a scientific source. He
Really.
he is he gets enough wrong where I'd say, you know, try to do some research on your own and verify, some of the things he says, because he is wrong sometimes. I've seen him say some extremely stupid crap. He made one blog post where he said high protein intakes cause like hypogonadism in bodybuilders. He's not a lifter, and he
Well, some stuff he has to stay in his lane. Like he made a video on hair loss and how rosemary oil can help
yeah
with that compared
yeah
to minoxidil 2.5%. It's like we've all tried that shit. It
yeah
doesn't work,
yeah. So
But on
I
average,
I
and,
wouldn't
and
just
Gregor does,
blindly trust him as a source.
yeah, but I do think that at least 90% of his advice is on point. And he has more references than any other plant-based doctor that I could think of. Like his new book, How Not to Age, I think he has 33,000 references, and he actually hired a fact checker. So if he's passing all those tests, I mean, I still think like who's the alternative? Uh, like my
Well, I
favorite
sure as
plant-based
hell wouldn't
doctor would.
listen to any of these carnivore doctors like Sean
Oh
Baker.
hell no,
Yeah.
no man, no, no. But I would say my favorite plant-based doctor is and you can let me know how you think about him, but Dr. Furman. And then I would say Caldwell Esselstyn is up there as well.
Okay, I think I know who Furman is. He's really big on like nuts and seeds, right? Is that the guy?
Yeah,
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 okay.
yeah.
I know
And on the
Furman. He's
phytochemicals and the
he's in
Vichy
pretty good
bombs.
shape.
Yeah, he's 70 years old and he's ripped. Obviously, he's not big, but his mental faculties are all there. And he's not afraid to rustle some jimmies. He's like, I'll give you, like, you know how I think there was a study that came out decades ago saying that the best recommendation would be to tell people to go vegan, but because it's difficult to adhere to, we're going to omit that from the paper. We're going to mention that you should just reduce your animal product consumption rather than telling people to eliminate altogether, right? So, you know what I'm talking about? Well, Dr. Furman has a similar approach in the sense that whatever the science says is best, he'll just give it to you. And one example would actually be a sodium intake, which I didn't know about until recently. So, in the plant-based community, they're going to say that you need about 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day, just like the gathering societies, in order to have a blood pressure of 110/70, right? And what Dr. Furman says is actually, if you actually look at the data, it's 1,000 milligrams a day. That'll give you an even further reduction in blood pressure. And so, and he'll say you want to go SOS free, so salt, sugar, and oil. Even though, like olive oil, for example, has monounsaturated fats and it's not as detrimental as other fats, he'd rather you just eat a walnut. Like, why have the walnut oil when you could just have the walnut, or say blend it up and use that as a part of your sauce? This way you get the minerals as well, right? So him, it's like always, what's the best option out of these plant-based foods? It's like taking it to another level. Like what's the best caloric bang for your buck? And to me, that's like, I love that shit. So
Yeah. And speaking of getting enough protein, we're both in the plus 400-pound club for bench.
hell yeah, grats on that,
So
by the way.
yeah, thanks. And yeah, so I've done that, by the way. 13 years vegan. I haven't taken any steroids. I did take a peptide called TB500. I think about a year and a half ago. I just had a shoulder injury, wasn't healing super like as fast as I'd like, so I did a cycle of TB500. I think I did that for 3, 4 weeks and fixed the problem. But so you can get enough protein, you can get stronger as a vegan, and you can bench
Easy.
over 400 pounds, which most of these other fitness YouTubers who eat meat can't do. Uh,
The best part is these guys are often weaker and smaller than us, and then they want to lecture us. It's like
oh, did you? By the
I
way,
hate.
did you see
Yeah,
Revival Fitness talking shit about you in his comment section?
I didn't, and I find that strange considering I've never said anything bad about him except for the fact that I strongly disagree with his diet advice. I think he's gonna end up with serious health complications with the way he's
Oh
eating.
yeah,
It's very scary to see, and I don't know how we got to this point, and I don't understand how he doesn't realize that these health issues he's experienced, like his skin is completely red. By the way, it's not just the sun. Like these so-called autoimmune issues, it's because of this insane amount of animal products. And if he
yeah.
would just were to try a plant-based diet, I think he would reverse these problems immediately. Like he's gone on the extreme deep end of this carnivore approach. The saturated fat blows my mind. Like I think he's getting 200 grams a day at least. Like that is a recipe for heart disease. And even look, even guys who are strong keto advocates, like Thomas DeLauer, even he'll say that he was wrong about saturated fat. That
Did he
he probably
now?
should have recommended lower. He did in a
Yeah.
recent video.
Wow.
So it's like the evidence is overwhelming at this point. If anything, like if someone doesn't want to go vegan, at least reduce your saturated fat intake. At least consume like horse meat or deer meat or something, you know? But like having fatty cuts like that, in addition to raw creams and eggs every day, what the fuck is that? That
It's
like I don't
pretty.
know, man.
It's
And
over the top.
Revival, listen, he benched like 3 plates at like in a bulked up body fat. I did 405 and I got down to 7% body fat this year, eating 1800 calories a day, doing cardio twice a day on a vegan diet. 315 for one. I was still able to do it at 155 body weight. So it's like we're mogging these people who are eating in this style,
Yeah.
like on every level. That's and I actually like the guy. Okay, I I watch his videos from time to time, and I think he gives good training advice as a whole. But his nutrition information is a mess. So I don't know why he's saying negative things about me. I want him to do better. I just think his takes on the natural community is very black pilled. I don't like that. And I think that he's setting himself up for health problems, as well as his audience who chooses to follow him. But otherwise, I don't have an issue with him.
Well, yeah, yeah, he
Like I think it's
absolutely
great that he
is.
competed in. Look, man, I followed a similar diet myself when I was 17 years old because I watched a Brandon Carter video, and I like Brandon, by the way. I still follow him. But he was like, yeah, man, you can eat your eggs every day. You're not going to end up with high cholesterol. Because look at this study, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this shit. So I start eating 8 eggs a day, in addition to having a bunch of cheese, which was high in saturated fat. And at 17, I'm like 167 pounds with abs. I'm competing in track and field and swimming. There's nobody who's more fit than me. I'm benching 2 plates for reps. I have an aesthetic physique. I go to the doctor and my blood pressure is like 145 over 90 and my cholesterol is borderline high. It's like at the limit. There's like the reference range. It's right under the top of the limit. And the doctor looks at me like, what the fuck? They were this close to putting me on statins, but like, okay, maybe try lowering your salt and doing all these things. And I was freaked out. I'm like, am I going to get a heart attack like my grandfather at 53 years old? Even though I'm in the fitness industry. And I'm telling you right now, I follow natural bodybuilders and some of them are under 50s and they're on fucking statins. And
Yeah.
it's like, you're supposed to be the epitome of health. You're natty. You've been doing this your whole life. You've been eating bro foods, quote unquote, not even this carnivore shit. And you do your cardio, you're doing your steps, you're doing all this, and yet you're on statins, proving that heart disease is in the process of developing. And yes, we know it starts at 10 years old.
Well, it
So
doesn't
it's
just
like,
start at 10. It literally starts at infancy.
yeah, this is scary stuff. This should be alarming to anyone who cares about their health. And listen, we chose to stay natural because we want to live a long, healthy life. That is first and foremost, and because it's all our gains and whatever, right? Why are you then going to be a hypocrite and consume foods that don't promote longevity? It just doesn't make sense. And then and side with these people are the flat earthers of the fitness community, man. There's nothing evidence based about what they say at all. Like, there's no nutritional expert in the world who will agree with anything they have to say.
Yeah.
And I don't claim to be smarter than these guys. I've read their books, I listen to their podcasts, and I'm just applying what they say is optimal according to the data. It's like they'll follow science-based advice when it comes to lifting, which that's actually shittier research than the nutritional stuff. Yet when it comes down to actual health, which they know nothing about, they'll side with some bro. A fucking bro who's on statins in his 50. Great job, guys.
Or they'll just listen to some quack tard like Bart K, who's just like some autistic weirdo who just tries to scam people on Patreon.
There's a lot of interesting fellows, but the worst is when they're highly educated and they use their credentials to steer you away. Like someone with a PhD talking about the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
But was it James Wilkes when he had a debate with someone? He's like, "Do you even know what a forest plot is?" And the guy was like,
yeah.
"Oh." So they don't really know what they're talking about.
Well, yeah, that was Chris Kresser. Chris Kresser's an absolute moron.
Yeah, and when you fact check them, it's like, again, it's an excuse. Like with the LDL, they're like, well, if my HDL is good, then I'm fine. And if I have no inflammation in my body, it's because of the Randolph cycle. It's because you're having your carbs and your animal products. But if you just eliminate the carbs, even though they're making themselves fucking pre-diabetic, then you're not going to have problems. Excuse after excuse after excuse.
Yeah.
It's just, but the plant-based community has no excuses.
Yeah, we just
we're thriving,
evidence.
And all the data says this is the way to eat. Like, show me another diet that can prevent heart disease like this. Now, I think you've changed your stance on,
heart disease
Dr.
reversal.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's more like you have bullet holes, but they don't. They're always there, but you're not creating new ones, kind of thing.
Well, sort of.
Like
So far, there's no evidence that you can reverse coronary atherosclerotic coronary artery disease or atherosclerotic heart disease.
How do you feel about the angiogram that shows that?
Well, angiograms aren't an imaging technique that can actually show you reductions in plaque volume. So you can find stenoses, and stenoses can improve, but it doesn't actually show you an improvement in plaque volume. And depending on the angle of the angiography, you can see a stenosed artery, but if you turn the image slightly, so you take the image at a different angle, well, then it doesn't look stenosed. So it's just not an appropriate imaging technique. I could be wrong. If I remember correctly, I think to actually be considered as having reversal of disease, you need to reverse plaque volume by, I think, at least 30%. And I haven't seen any nutrition intervention study reduce plaque volume by about 30%. That would be the actual scientific definition of atherosclerotic heart disease reversal.
Okay. But I'm sure you would still agree that, like, if someone had advanced heart disease and they switched to a fully plant-based diet,
they'd have an improvement in outcomes.
And they'd probably, maybe they wouldn't get a heart attack moving forward. Maybe some other disease would get them.
So, you can avoid another heart attack. So if we're talking about like secondary prevention, you can avoid getting a future heart attack or stroke. And in order to minimize a future heart attack or stroke, you have to get your LDL below 35 milligrams per deciliter.
Okay.
A lot of people won't be able to do that with dietary intervention alone. So for secondary prevention, it's pretty much absolutely necessary that you have to go on a statin or cholesterol lowering medication.
Well, even if, because Esselstyn will say you want your LDL between 50 and 70 nanograms per deciliter.
Yeah, that's fine for primary prevention. For secondary prevention, you want it below 35.
Okay, so let's say you go on a plant-based diet, you're at 50, but you've had a heart attack in the past. You should combine that with a statin to get even lower?
Yeah, you want it below 35 for secondary prevention.
That's crazy, eh? Wow. But the average
That's
person who
that's just what the data
does this,
shows. When
okay,
you so you can look at the predictions in the likelihood that you'll have another heart attack based on your serum cholesterol score. It approaches 0 when you get below 35. So that's where you want to be if you want to avoid another heart attack.
wow, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't really like Esselstyn.
Really, all the guys I
He's
like, you don't like.
he's very much against medication, and medication works. Uh, we know it works, and even for secondary prevention, he's still against people taking medications. He's encouraged people who've already had a heart attack to go off their cholesterol lowering medication just because they're on a plant based diet, which is stupid. If you want the
Okay,
best
so
patient outcomes, you want to also put them on a statin. There's practically no way anybody can get their cholesterol down to 35 with just diet and lifestyle intervention alone. Like, unless you're starving yourself, like permanently, but then you'd like wither away and die. So
okay,
you
but if you're
absolutely need cholesterol lowering medications.
but let's say you go on a plant-based diet and you're in your 20s, like you've been doing this for 14 years, you said, or was it 13?
Yeah.
All right, so your cholesterol must be very low, and it's probably going to stay that way for life.
Last time
So
I
let's
checked,
say,
it was at 85. So it was above 70, which doesn't put you in a high risk category. I get blood tests every so often, like every year or two. So if it, for whatever reason, kind of stays high, I might actually consider going on a statin to get it below
right.
70.
But if you were in the 50 to 70 range for life, would you ever consider getting on statins? Like now, let's say you're 80 years old, would you then say, you know what, let's take it down one step further, even though it's been consistent and you've been doing whole
Probably
food
not.
the right way?
Not unless there was new data suggesting that I'd have any benefit going on a statin if my cholesterol was in that range. So cholesterol is very highly genetically determined. There are
Okay.
people, no matter what they do, they cannot get their cholesterol below 70.
And they should consider a statin in that case.
Yeah. Um, I would say probably this is an estimate, but I would say probably half of people can't get their cholesterol below 70 just through
Wow.
diet and dietary intervention alone. And
Wow.
if you look at the data, like almost nobody is that low. There, it's either genetic outliers or people who are again on cholesterol lowering medications.
Yeah.
Because most people are eating a
Well,
lot of saturated fat and cholesterol in their diet too, so you're
yeah.
typically
Well,
not going to see many people.
if I may say this, so my girlfriend's been doing this with me, although she follows more an Adventist approach. You know, the pescatarian diet that they followed. I think they lived a year and a half longer, but they had a higher cancer rate. She's basically vegan without the ethical side for the fish, right? She's 95% plant based, having fish max once a week. And she always had normal cholesterol levels. And as we know, normal means you're probably at a risk for heart disease because we live in an unhealthy society, right? And after eating this way, she got a blood test done after I think 7 months, and she got her cholesterol down to LDL. Sorry, sorry, she got her LDL down to 60. So
Okay.
she's actually in the optimal range now. So I saw this with my own two eyes, you know. So that's very encouraging because you would think, oh, maybe a healthy girl who worked out all her life eating a typical health food diet, right, and eliminating the saturated fat had that much of an impact. Not to mention curing her former gut issues, because a lot of people will say if you go vegan, it's going to somehow destroy your gut when it's complete opposite. You're actually developing your microbiome, and fiber is like an independent health promoter, you could say.
Yeah.
And I find it funny how like guys who follow even balanced, healthy diets, quote unquote, they're getting like 30 to 40 grams of fiber a day, which is fuck all to anyone who
Yeah, it's
follows a
pretty
plant
low.
based diet. It's very low. Like even when I was eating 1,800 calories, I was getting 80 grams of fiber a day. So it's like, how
Yeah.
are you getting 40?
If
Like,
you're
what do you,
eating a lot of
you're
beans,
clearly,
lentils, it's easy.
it's guaranteed, you know, and you should have the best bowel movements of your life, not
Yeah.
destroy.
Yeah,
So,
that was a great benefit when I first went vegan. I think there's a gene that makes you have like constipation from dairy. I think I might have that because
I
I
have the
had
same problem.
I had really bad constipation when I was a kid, and my parents always made me like
Hmm.
eat milk because
Suppositories and stuff.
yeah. So going vegan and just having the nicest, smoothest shits that just come out easily, it was great.
Hey, me too. I had problems with constipation as a kid. It sucked.
Yeah.
And when I followed an animal based diet for my bodybuilding contest last year, this was before I went vegan. I was actually constipated for the first time in years, which I was so plugged up I couldn't go for 3 days, even the day of my competition. And then this year, again, 100% plant based, getting my fiber in every day. I went perfectly, no issues. So it's like I think there's something. I think fiber is not a conspiracy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
So
it's better for your digestion. Again, people who eat more fiber have more frequent bowel movements. They're less likely to get constipated. And like that's what fiber does. It just creates large bowel masses that are, nice and smooth and soft, and they move through your system, just fine. But
that's
speaking of revival fitness again, like there's this whole narrative that like a vegan diet will destroy your gut and mess up your digestion.
the
Here's
opposite.
here's revival fitness talking shit about you. I could probably look through my Instagram messages. Somebody sent me like a screen cap of what he said, but he
I'd be
was
interested in hearing what he has to say
yeah. You
about
know
me.
what? I might have actually saved it on my PC. I'll look for it, but he's been following this incredibly stupid. Yeah, he's been
I
following
think
this incredibly stupid fucking diet where he eats a ton of dairy, and
a
very
lot.
high fat dairy and
Yeah.
a lot of red meat, and people were asking him like are you having like insane constipation on this? Turns out it's the opposite. He's been having frequent
Diarrhea.
diarrhea. So
Well, shit, man.
yeah, I mean, it's just funny. Like this guy, he can bench 315, which I'm not going to take that accomplishment away from him. That's pretty difficult. But we're
But look, it's
we're
not.
benching over
I'm sorry,
400
but
pounds. He actually said you look like shit. Actually, in a
oh,
comment,
come on,
he
come on,
said you
bro.
look like shit
You
because of
can't
your
say
plant
that.
based
Come on, I
diet.
mog him.
Yeah,
You can't say that.
look,
Look at my shred.
we
Look at
have
my shredded physique. Compare it to his. It's night and day.
yep.
And I'm
So
again. I'm not trying to
I
talk
would
shit about
say
the guy.
you mog him. You definitely mog him when it comes to lifting. You can bench damn near 100 pounds more than him. I'd say physique wise, probably win on a bodybuilding stage, and on top of that, you're not having fucking diarrhea.
No, yeah, I don't have any health problems. I'm the healthiest I've ever been in my life. And I would even say like, because he might even make the comment, well, when you bench 405, you weren't vegan. I was still 80, 90% plant based. But let's go with that argument. Okay, I'm building my strength right now as a vegan. And this is the strongest I've ever been pound for pound. I didn't get fat, which is awesome. I'm actually able to like slowly gain the weight. No more dirty bulking while preserving my health. And I'm going to bench over 400. And the world is going to see that. I'm at least going to do 405 at a lighter body weight. And then I'm going to try to go beyond. And as of right now, like I've already done a 365 close grip bench. It moves so easily. You might even say I'm good for 380. It's like my strength is exploding at a rapid rate. I see zero differences in recovery compared to when I followed the alternative. And ultimately, I passed the ultimate test. Could I maintain my physique on the way down, getting to single digit body fat in addition to my strength? And the answer was yeah, compared to last time, big difference. And until I see others doing the same thing, hitting a 3 plate bench at single digit body fat, a 5 plate dip for 2 reps, again single digit, 4 1 arm pull ups, 185-pound weighted pull ups, every grip. I want to see that single digit. And I want to see them match my numbers at this body weight, which they can't. So they can talk all the shit they want, but results
And
talk.
they're gonna die of a heart attack. Just give it time. So
It's unfortunate because it doesn't have to be this way, and I and
yeah,
I
it
hope
doesn't.
that, again, I don't have any hatred towards these people, except for maybe the extreme carnivore people, because they're actually harming
Well, people like
the
Paul
health of.
Saladino are
I
genuinely
don't like him one
lying.
bit because
He's
it's.
actually lying and knows he's lying.
Yeah, but I think the influencers who fall into this trap, they don't necessarily have bad intentions. They've just been bamboozled because they haven't looked at any evidence. And I think Revival falls into that camp. Again, I have nothing bad to say about him otherwise. I just think he's following a very dangerous diet.
Yeah, he
And
is.
I hope that he changes his ways for himself, because he will end up with heart issues. He will.
Yeah,
And I'm
guaranteed.
calling this right now. It is guaranteed. You're not gonna last eating that way.
I think he got a blood panel. I can't remember what his LDL was, but it was extremely high. Again, if you look at the
Of course.
data, like nearly 100% of people in that cholesterol range end up getting heart disease. So yeah, it's just a numbers game, and just
But
give
do
it
you
enough
want to take
time.
that chance?
If he keeps eating like that, he's gonna face the consequences. It's not
It's cause and
like
effect.
we're warning him, but I don't know. Some people are beyond help.
Like I say this out of love. And I'm not even gonna tell the guy to go vegan. You don't have to.
I
Like,
would
that's where
say
I can.
you have
You
to,
know,
and if I could, I would force him.
I would say that's the better choice. Obviously, that's what we're trying to promote here. We think it's best. But if someone's really reluctant, like, oh, I don't want to be a wimpy vegan, whatever, which we're not, but at least lower your saturated fat intake. Like, please just do that. Start there and see how you feel. And I
Yeah,
promise it'll be better than the shit he's doing now.
might give him less
It's
diarrhea. Who knows?
cut out the dairy, cut out the saturated fat. Yeah.
How about we get into some programming? Because I think we did some different things getting to a 405 bench. I know
Yes.
you're really into Conjugate. Um, were
Yes.
you doing any speed work? Because I remember you did a video a while ago.
No,
Because you said like speed work's just bullshit. I
I don't do speed work.
I was looking into Conjugate because you were kind of promoting it, and Louis Simmons and
Well,
everything was big, and
I think
most of those
I think it was
dudes
just
just never did speed work.
speed work came after. It actually started off as a double max effort approach, but then these guys got so strong that it was killing the recovery. And that is something you'll experience eventually if you try that. But the alternative of replacing it for speed work, they say it's to feed into your max effort. But my response would be just eliminate the speed work at the very start and go into what you would have done immediately after anyway, which is just bodybuilding, hypertrophy work. So, and you'll arguably have better recovery going into your next bench session. So the template itself is fine, but I don't think you need it. And powerlifting is not a sport where you necessarily have to, because we're lifting maximal loads here. It's not necessarily about acceleration. That helps with lighter weights. I think in a calisthenics context, that would definitely be applicable. Olympic weightlifter, same thing, but not a sport where it's a 1 rep max with the slowest possible velocity and you're grinding like a motherfucker. So
Yeah, I think
that's my take on that.
I think Louis' idea behind it was he wanted to have his lifters lifting as heavy as possible for like as many days as possible. And then he figured,
Yes,
okay, with a lighter weight but moved very fast, it technically produces the same force across the muscle, which it
the
doesn't
force
because that's not how your muscles work. He was
the
using
force
like
is high,
some
and
physics equation.
force equals mass times acceleration. That's what it'll say.
Yeah,
And
and a
you're
lighter weight moved like much faster produces the same force, but it doesn't give you the same adaptation.
it
So,
doesn't. But I do think it could still have its benefits when you program it correctly. Like, at least it'll teach you how to be explosive at all
yeah.
times. But again, it's something that I honestly feel like if you just do the presses with accommodating resistance, that in itself will teach you how to be fast, because there's no other way around it. And especially if you use the max effort method, like, you have to explode off your chest, or else you're just gonna sink on you.
Well, especially with
But
bands, because like with
with
bands,
the bands,
yeah,
listen,
you'll get
if
buried.
you're maxing out every week with different band and chain combinations, you can't not be explosive. It's basically impossible. And then if you do like dead benching That's not going to be weak link. If anything, your hypertrophy is going to be more of a limiter than how fast you can move with submaximal loads. But to what I would tell you, Richard, is that the conjugate system, the main benefit of it is that it reduces overuse injuries. And that might be interesting for you, considering you've had issues with the elbow and the shoulder. So it's not necessarily that you're getting faster strength progress. You can argue it's actually slower
Yeah,
compared to a higher specificity program.
well, I broke my elbow mountain biking.
Yeah,
And my shoulder wasn't an overuse injury. I hurt it doing squats, but I did actually get a lot of inflammation in my pec tendons, and that may have been due to the lack of variation. That is one
usually that's what it
benefit.
is.
Yeah, that is the one benefit with Conjugate. If I ever, I'm considering maybe doing a run up to a 500-pound bench. I might actually do that, and I think I can.
Oh, crazy.
405 moved super easy,
Very easy.
and I did 410. Even that moved pretty well. And I wasn't benching like I normally do too. I had to use a narrower grip because my pec tendons were so inflamed. So
Hmm.
I might have actually been able to get like 415, 420 if that didn't happen. But if I do another run up to like try to get to 450 or 500, I'll probably include a lot more variation. So like do
Would
underhand
you
grip and stuff.
Yeah, you're 6'3", right?
Yeah.
And have you ever checked your ape index?
No. Oh, you mean like
No?
wingspan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's exactly 6'3".
Okay, so you're like actually that would indicate a pretty decent build for benching in that case. Because I would say if you had a positive ape index, then the range of motion might be so low that this can contribute to more pec overuse. And usually for guys like that, you want to do more board pressing, for example, just so you're not overly stretching the bottom position at all
Okay.
times. But that could still be to your benefit. I would
Yeah,
say incorporating a variety
I've
of.
never gotten into board pressing. Um
I
so
would tell
like
you to buy.
what's the big benefit with board pressing?
It just reduces shoulder and pec overuse,
So it
and it
just
hits the
prevents you from
triceps a
getting
little bit
too
harder,
low in the range of motion and then
basically.
yeah.
So if you're benching twice a week, and maybe on your because if you're not following an asynchronous split, the recovery is not going to be even between sessions. So if I did like max effort bench on Monday, I'm getting an additional day to recover moving on to Friday, right? But then after Friday, I just get Saturday, Sunday to recover. You know what I'm saying? So on the Friday session, if I were to do a board press, that could give me better recovery than going into the Monday. And I wouldn't have to take an extra day off,
Okay.
or like have this weird split where it's not. So that would be the benefit there. And the carryover is 1-to-1 because when we talk about the board press, it should be like a half board to a one board, which is like this much, bro. The guys at Westside, you'll see them doing like these really thick boards, and you have guys like holding it down. That's not gonna do much for you as a raw lifter. But if it's a minor partial, you best believe it'll feed into that bench perfectly. Like a month before I did 4 or 5, I did a half board for one rep, and you move fast, and there you go.
I've
So
tried
it's a good litmus test.
I've tried incorporating like pin presses and floor presses into my routine before.
Those are great too.
I never really liked them. Like maybe I just didn't give it enough of a chance, but I don't know. I just came away from sessions and didn't really get a good pump or DOMs or anything because I guess you're not
Well,
getting that stretch
no,
position.
it's like the pin press, you're losing some of that tightness in the bottom because the bar is completely decelerated. You kill off, it's like a collision, right? So the technique's not exactly the same. So I find the carryover is less. A board press, you'll notice that it feels exactly like a bench, just that the range of motion is just more of a partial. And the floor press, that's really going to be dependent on your build, how low you can get. Like for me, when I get low, it's like the same position as a one board press. So it feeds into it 1-to-1. Basically, if your floor press is weaker than your flat bench, it's probably good developmental exercise for you. Whereas if it's significantly stronger, it's just like a partial that's easy, then you're probably better off doing something else. So
Okay.
maybe that was the case for yourself. I don't know how high it was when you were doing it, but or maybe you need a different variation of the floor press. like
Okay.
using yeah, like some guys even will stack something behind them so that they get more arm bend in the bottom. Like they'll lie down on some thick mats or something, you know?
Okay.
So
And how did you handle progression week to week? Like especially if you're switching variations so
yeah,
often.
so the max effort method is just teaching you how to strain in a variety of positions, and it's a test of what your weaknesses are, right? And it's just so that you maintain that ability to lift heavy year round. Because if you were to use the same variation, you would have to follow like some periodization scheme where the volume is gradually lowering as the intensity rises. But with weekly max effort, you make that rotation, and it's I swear to God, you can do it year round. And Westside has proven this, as have I, for many years now. So that's like an independent thing. But the ultimate hack besides that is following it up with back down sets, which are usually going to be percentage based. So you know how there's the speed waves that Louis talked about? Well, you can apply your own 3 week wave, but as a back down approach to get stronger using percentages that are actually specific, which powerlifters actually use. And what I found is something as simple as 3 sets of 10 at 70% is phenomenal. And then you would increase the weight by like 5 pounds per session, or 2.5% if you want to be more precise. You do that for 3 weeks, and then you rotate the variation to something else. And that allows you to have these micro blocks
Okay.
throughout the yearly training cycle. And then so that's like for the max effort day, and then the volume day, quote unquote, or rather the day where you're, just doing bodybuilding only.
So on max
You
effort
don't
days, you're still doing like some higher volume stuff with sets of 10 with like 70%.
exactly.
Okay.
And then the secondary day, you can do like 2 sets per exercise, and there's no periodization element. You're just following double progression, or you might do something like a top set, back down set. So like you might do 315 for 6, then your next set like 4 reps, or you can do 315 for 8, and then your next set 325 for 6. Like there's different ways to mix it up, but I would just say double progression on your secondary day, hypertrophy only, and then max effort with some back down sets, leaving some reps in reserve for some more strength specificity. And that tends to work very well. And you want different exercises for different days. Specifically, on the max effort day, you can do more lengthened work. Anything that's like systemically taxing that you need more days to recover, like deep dumbbell presses, cambered bar bench, stuff like that, works well. Then on the secondary day where you have less time to recover, that's where you can introduce the board presses, the floor presses, or just stuff that doesn't stretch you to the same extent. So you're also managing overuse in that way.
Okay.
And also for the isolation work, like on the max effort day, you can do your jam presses if you can handle it. On the secondary day, you can drop them and do something like a dual row push down or band push downs just to get that blood flowing real good. So you're always fresh coming in each week.
So you never had any specific blocks where you just focused on hypertrophy, didn't do any like max effort stuff. It was all just,
Well,
conjugate.
I've basically been conjugate only, except for phases where it's like I just care about bodybuilding. I'll drop the max effort method, but I'll still follow a conjugate thought process when it comes to exercise rotation. Again, just to reduce overuse. And I usually don't keep a movement in for longer than 3 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
So I still have a high rotation. And the benefit of that is also for general strength development.
I'm like the opposite of that. I have very, very little variation. I've pretty much just been straight benching for the last couple of years.
Which is fine. It works.
Yeah. Haven't, yeah, it wasn't until I was just moving, heavier weights. I think once I got to like doing sets of threes with, like 360, 365, where
Yeah.
I really noticed the tendon inflammation. But yeah, I think it was year and a half ago, I got my bench up to 340 for 4 sets of 3. I just couldn't get past that. So I backed down. I lost weight. Just I think I was dieting for like 2 months or something, or 6 weeks. Then I just went on a really long hypertrophy phase that lasted for, I think, about 8 months. I got my bench up to 315 for, I almost got to 10, but I got 9. And then I figured I built enough muscle to actually, be able to hit 405. So I just went back to, strength phase. I gradually sort of transitioned to strength. So before I was only doing sets of 8 to 10 on bench. I earlier on in the week I'd do sets of 5, and then later on in the week I'd do sets of 8 to 10, and then I transitioned to more specific strength work where it was only sets of 3 to 5. And I initially started off with benching 3 times per week. So it would be flat bench, and then middle of the week it would be incline, then later in the week it would be flat again. What ended up happening was I was getting the tendon inflammation, and I had these like really minor, like not too big of a deal sort of strains. So I'd feel something kind of pull, but by the next session it'd feel fine, but then I'd pull it again. So I realized I was training a little too frequently with the loads I was lifting. So what ended up happening was every 3 to 4 days, depending on how I felt my recovery was going, I would bench. So it was kind of like an asynchronous split at that point. And then eventually I knew exactly how high I needed to accumulate to. So I got to benching 365 for sets of 3. Did that fairly easily, and I knew I could do 405 if I got that high. And then right around that time, I didn't even do like any kind of peaking phase because the pec inflammation was pretty bad. So I kind of had to do it quickly, or else I'd have to like wait again and then accumulate up again. So I just went for 405. That moved super easy. Then I tried 410. That moved pretty well. And then I tried 415, but I failed that.
It's okay. No, it's funny how you mentioned the frequency aspect, that it was like every 3 to 4 days, depending on how you felt. I've kind of stumbled upon the same thing. I noticed that if I'm not in that range, then my shoulders feel a little bit off. You could get like some pulling sensations. And I think the reason is because you're lifting so damn heavy. And this is what people don't understand and they can't relate to. When you're benching 3 plates for reps every single week, the absolute load itself is an independent recovery stressor.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do frequency bench. Like, you really got to know what you're doing. And it probably helps if you have like a wide grip with a larger arch. And as you mentioned, you're not doing that. Your grip is rather narrow, deep range of motion. And so it's more legit if you ask me, but it's also difficult to hit on a frequent basis. And so
I've tried,
even with
I've tried super wide grip, and I think I'd actually be stronger on it. Like if you're used to a narrow grip, wide can be pretty hard, but if you actually practice a very wide grip, I think a lot of people could be pretty strong on it. But I just noticed it would give me like tendon pain. I notice it just stretch out my pec tendon a bit too much.
Well, look, to last in this game, it's not worth it. Like, even myself, I have a pretty good build for benching, and the wider I go, the more overuse I develop. So I know that the potential could be higher. Like, I just go a thumb away from the smooths. But at the end of the day, I value not getting snapped up, because even if something is more efficient on paper, if you have to take months off from the gym, or you can't, in general, if there's like a break of some kind, then ultimately the progress was not faster. And you can end up with a career-ending injury that just stops everything altogether. So if you can preserve...
tears can be super, super serious. And sometimes they're irreparable. If it tears at the muscle and not the tendon, you can't reattach it. You can't attach tendon to a muscle. You can only attach tendon to the bone.
That's a scary thought. So it's like...
Yeah, there was actually a powerlifter that happened to. His pec tore. It wasn't a complete avulsion, but it was only the muscle. The tendon was still intact. So his muscle is like down here, and he has this like long, wiry tendon
Yeah.
going into his humerus, and there's no surgery that can fix it. So if you think you're like going to snap your shit up doing something, just don't. It's not worth it.
No.
There's always ways to get stronger without doing what you're doing. It might take a little while longer, might not be ideal for you, but what's really unideal is, an irreparable injury.
That's right. And we have our whole lives to get better at this pursuit. Like, I find it funny how people want to rush to get their PR and then they're just going to move on from it forever, right? But it's like, do you plan on lifting for decades or not? Like, was this just a trophy that you're going to forget about? Because, like, if you start lifting at 20 and then you're 30 years old, you're probably going to build the majority of your size. But what, you're just going to stop? You still got many more decades to go. And you can probably get significantly stronger in that process. So take your time. It's going to be slow regardless.
Yeah,
And even
and
if it's,
I think a lot of people this might be, a thing from like the 80s where, once you kind of reach 30, you're kind of at your peak and done, and then you just, do the normal everyday jerk off job thing. But I've met guys who are in their mid to late 50s who are at their strongest ever. I think
strength seems to be that exception.
yeah, I think as long as you take care of yourself and you don't get injured and, you lift consistently, you can get strong into your 50s. Um,
100%.
yeah, I don't see any reason, like, really why not. It's not like your hormones change all that much into your 50s. Like, again, most people are, as long as they're healthy, their testosterone's not going to dip that much. You're not gonna be so old where you have like a ton of anabolic resistance, and like most people just don't really keep lifting and training like they used to. Like, everybody gets,
Yeah.
normal
They
jobs.
got
Maybe
caught up in life. Yeah.
they get kind of disinterested in training and get bored of it. So I think there's this perception that, okay, well, once you turn 40 or something, it's kind of game over. But you have a very, very long lifting career if you want it.
Absolutely. And that
If
should
you
be
want it to be
encouraging.
long.
Yeah. I think only after like 60 years old, you see a motor unit recruitment deficit, like when you were a novice, and maybe the way you know, intake protein is a bit affected. But other than that, like you got enough time. Let's say you start lifting at 30, which you can consider late. You still got 30 damn years to build a respectable physique. And this old man strength that people talk about is real. And tendons, you can slowly develop them over time. Also, most powerlifters, their peak is like 35 at the minimum. That's actually what we're seeing now. It's not the guys in their 20s, unless they started lifting at like 10, 12 years old. But then they've already had over a decade of lifting. So it just proves my point that it's going to take a long time, you know? So I think the key is not getting injured and avoiding like super high frequency, ultra specific programming is probably helpful in that regard. Because a lot of guys are banged up by 25. They,
Yeah.
from 18 to 25, they did way too much, and yeah, now they're never gonna be the same. So
Yeah. Do you ever see yourself going on any kind of steroids, TRT, any circumstances in which you could see yourself doing that?
I don't really see myself using that stuff unless I would be absolutely forced to. Like that, my testosterone is so goddamn low that I'm depressed all the time. I have no energy. I start losing all my gains. But I honestly don't see it happening, considering I follow the best diet you can think of. So like, when would this realistically occur? When I'm 70 years old? Okay, maybe then you could put me on TRT. But I think a lot of guys are using that as an excuse early on, or like they'll compete in a natural bodybuilding show and their test levels will drop and they'll be like, oh, you
Yeah.
see, I'm never gonna recover. And then they hop on. It's like you wanted to hop on because it's normal. Like when you look at the data, everyone experiences a drop off. But if you give yourself 2 or 3 months, you'll be back at 100%. It's
Yeah.
like I don't really buy that unless you do it like multiple times. Sorry, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, I've seen a few fitness YouTubers go like do a bodybuilding show and then they stay shredded and then their testosterone's like non-existent and then because they get fucked up from social media and shit, they have to hop on
Yeah.
TRT.
Look, I tried to stay shredded. I lasted for like a month and a half, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I could feel so much better, be stronger if I just gain a bit of weight back. And look at that. My everything is the way it should be.
Yeah.
So I think, but I have seen some guys who like they compete in a show every single year, and they do it for a decade straight, and now they're like 40, and their T levels don't recover. So it's like,
I think it's the
do they need
stress.
TRT?
I
Yeah,
yeah, I think long-term stress can actually permanently cause like shutdown.
yeah.
Um
And
I have a friend who had to hop on TRT. He had really really low test, and some of the doctors were telling him it was likely stress related.
that's crazy. But I think it's not the case for most people. They just follow. They live like shit in their 20s,
Yeah,
and now life is actually catching up on them. Not to mention they have more responsibilities, and everything just adds up at once.
yeah.
But I
So
think health is a
obesity, lack of sleep, and stress are probably the
well that
biggest
too. I think
factors that are influencing it.
there was a video I saw the other day talking about how testosterone levels in 30-year-old men today is the same as 50-year-olds from back then. And the reason is not because of microplastics or whatever people claim nowadays, but rather it's due to obesity. That is the primary reason. Because the average man is fatter than ever before, that in itself is aromatizing and it affects your hormonal levels on every scale. And people don't talk about the fact that we had lead issues, in the early 1900s. Like we were still being poisoned in some kind of way. We've never been totally free of pollutants and whatever, right?
Yeah.
But and the guys smoked, they drank alcohol, they did all kinds of things that were unhealthy. They ate more animal products, you could say as well, right? So it's like, what if someone follows an evidence-based lifestyle from a young age? They take care of themselves. They're fit, healthy, jacked, all these things. I think you probably won't need TRT for a very long time. And if you ever do,
If
well,
ever.
so be it. But it's gonna be delayed. Like I follow some natural bodybuilders and they're in their 50s and they're doing just fine. They mog me, and they've actually competed multiple times. So you would think they're on the lower side. So I don't know what life has in store for us. Maybe at 40 we'll be like, fuck, we actually do need this. I don't know, but I'm gonna try everything in my power to avoid taking it. And also, I want to see the long term data on it because yeah, people are saying it's probably better for you, assuming it restores you to natural like baseline, right? But do we know that for certain? There's a lot of like I think Menno
Well,
Henselman released an article recently, and there's still some you can still poke some holes
there's
in there.
still some questions about long-term mortality and morbidity, but most people are going on it for symptom relief. So, like,
Right.
if you have like no energy, no libido, can't really enjoy life that much, the trade-off of maybe not living quite as long, cutting your life short like 2 years, probably worth it in that circumstance. There was a big prospective cohort released fairly recently, which showed lower mortality but higher morbidity. So they had like higher instances of heart attacks, but they actually lived longer. The dudes on TRT.
Yeah,
So you could
I could believe that.
probably like we can say for certain it improves quality of life for the most part.
Definitely.
Um, One thing that's interesting is gene editing. And there is
Mhm.
actually a company, Brian Johnson made a video about it. There's a company that can inject a thing into you and it gives you the that weird muscle gene that
Mouse
those
salad?
Belgian blue cows have.
No way.
And apparently it works. He increased his muscle mass by I think 7% after getting that injection after 6 months. So and it's only
Damn,
$20,000. It's like the cost of a new
that's
Toyota
crazy as
Corolla.
hell.
So I think I'm gonna get that.
Damn. But then you're no longer natty, eh? You do that, it's done.
Well, some people have that gene naturally,
Some
so
people have it. Yeah, that's true. Like apparently Eddie Hall has it, but
yeah.
you're right. That's something to think about. But Fuck, that's crazy as hell.
I don't really care about being natural. Like if there was a steroid that made you live longer, made you more jacked, and like it just improved your life, I'd obviously take it. And yeah, that muscle gene apparently it might actually extend your life. That's why Brian Johnson was interested in it. And there is a concern that it might actually contribute to cancer, but they can actually turn off the gene. So they can just inject you with something to deactivate the gene, and then if there happens to be a risk of cancer, they can just turn it off.
Right. So I
So
guess it would be to prevent frailty as you age,
yeah,
because that's like
so
the biggest risk factor. And then you turn off the cancer gene to avoid the excessive IGF-1, and I guess you're good.
I don't know if it
That's how that
affects
would play out.
IGF-1, but like again, there's a concern that that gene might contribute to certain cancers, but if you get the cancer, they can turn off the gene, presumably, getting rid of the cancer. So the cancer will just die off. So
Wow.
yeah, it seems legit. Brian Johnson got it. He increased his muscle mass, and there is some rodent research on it, which isn't great. Rodent research is literally a coin flip. It's 50-50 if it's
Yeah.
true or not. But there is some rodent research indicating that rats with that gene live longer. So there's a chance if you have it, you might actually live longer if you have that gene.
It's
So
gonna be interesting to
I'm
see like what
definitely
happens.
getting that when I got the money. I just have to save up for like a
Wow.
Toyota Corolla.
Okay. And I'm guessing the reason why the whole natural thing doesn't like the reason why you've stayed natural is because you know that taking something is detrimental to your health. But
Well,
assuming there were no negatives, you'd
there's
consider it.
there's a
You're getting
variety
at?
of reasons. If I had like just easy access to steroids, so if I could go to a pharmacy, get any pharmaceutical grade steroid I wanted, I might actually go on them. The issue is there's not a safe, reliable supply. I was talking to a few dudes on Instagram. They hooked me up with this pharmacy in Turkey. You have to email them through Proton email. You have to send them Bitcoin, and then they can't guarantee that you even get the steroids. And a lot of time they're out of stock because they ship internationally to all these pro bodybuilders and shit. So even if it works out for like one shipment, okay, well, if I need like another month or two supply of something, they might be out, or it might get stopped at the border. Um, and if I wanted to find any other avenue, like it's completely unreliable. Like Greg Doucette
Wow.
was smuggling steroids across the border. Turns
Yeah,
out all the steroids he was selling were fake. So
that's
like
crazy.
it's kind of like you'd have to be an idiot, in my opinion. Like why would I risk taking fake drugs or taking drugs that are not safe, that are filled with bacteria that could kill me? Or like make me amputate an arm or something. Like, it's just
And
stupid.
imagine you're an influencer with a large following and you have the money to afford this and you would still have difficulties. So imagine someone who's following a young idol who's like 22 years old and is enhanced to the gills and they're like, "Oh, I want to be like that."
Well, that's
And
why
they try getting
SARMs are
their
so
hands
big,
on
dude.
it.
That
It's because of that, eh?
well, it's because SARMs are not like they're usually either Dianabol or something, or they're an actual SARM. I think like 65% of SARMs on the market are actually legit, which is actually relatively high because that's higher than
Right.
like in the supplement industry. So you're just taking something that's an oral compound. Um, from what I've heard, it's relatively easy to actually find some SARM companies that will actually sell you legit SARMs. So the risk of taking something fake or tainted or something
Right.
relatively low, because I know a few dudes, in the fitness industry and some dudes on Instagram that are into gear. Like they've told me if you're getting any kind of exotic compounds, like it's fucking fake. If you're trying to look for
Wow.
Anavar, it's fake. It's probably like D-ball or Winstrol. So everything is fake. But with SARMs, it's like probably a 65% chance if you order from any supplier, you're actually getting something that's real. So I think
Yeah.
that's why SARMs are really big. You don't have to inject it, no scary needle, and it's actually fairly easy to find legit SARMs.
I guess because it's like a research chemical, so it's still like a gray zone, and you can get away with
Especially in Canada.
selling it.
Yeah, especially in Canada.
Hmm. But either way, I
But
think well, Jerry Branham made it.
I think
It has
he's
its own set of effects as well.
yeah, well yeah.
You're not walking away from that without some problems.
You're still I think all these people are crazy, especially these young kids. Like with so much fake shit, you have to be insane to take this crap.
Damn. When you put it like that, like that is insane, and it should be even more of a reason to discourage drug use. But now it's like I see
You
it
just don't know
booming
what
more
the
than
fuck you're
ever.
getting. You have no
You
idea.
don't know,
Could be a pro
but you know there's a
hormone, could be a SARM, could be D-ball when you're trying to get Winstrol or something. Like you have no idea. There's some dudes
well,
who have like really good hookups. Like there are some good underground labs, but I don't know any hookups like that. Like I'm not a Mr. Olympia competitor
well
who
that's
has
why
like a well-known coach.
that's it. You don't have the connections. It's a gamble, and that's why people get mad at me for saying this. But I'll use the word degenerate drug user
Yeah.
because it kind of is degenerate. Like you're first of all you're willing to risk your health knowing in advance, but then it's like you're doubling down on that because you don't even know what you're taking.
Yeah.
And you don't mind lying about your status if you need to, or you don't want to build a base first naturally before even considering that stuff. Like I think even Greg Doucette, with all the stuff he's done, he only hopped on in his 30s, so he still put in over a decade of natural training. Now you got guys right out of high
Hopped
school in
on.
it.
Uh there's some gray areas there.
Or
He
whatever he claims,
he
regardless,
got
he still had a base, right?
he got
We can say the same
busted
for
he got busted in a powerlifting meet for taking a GNC supplement thing that was one of those gray area supplements. And I think he knew exactly what he was doing because
if he knew, but if he didn't, then
he definitely knew. So this supplement contained both a SARM and an aromatase inhibitor. Greg, after this whole thing happened on this powerlifting forum, he knew everything about fucking steroids. Like he was explaining, why would I take this when it has a half-life of this?
okay.
So he knew exactly what he was doing. So I don't know.
You know
You
what?
could say natty with an asterisk, you know.
I think in a way it's better to be in the dark of not knowing all this shit about steroids. Like I see a bunch of natties who they're watching like they have like PhDs on steroids. They're buying all these books, they're watching all the channels, and it's like why are you even learning this information if you
I
don't
think
want
it's good
to
to know.
hop on?
All knowledge
To
is
know certain
power.
basics, but it's all knowledge is potential power, yeah. Uh, but it's like usually the way I see it is because you're thinking about taking it, like
Well,
you're
yeah.
dancing on it. You're getting informed, but there's like another motive behind it. Unless you
Well,
really just you have no so like you don't care. You just
well,
want
look at
to
it
hear
this
all the
way.
facts.
There it is entirely possible, unlikely, but entirely possible that there is a way of taking steroids where it could be safe, might actually have health benefits, or you could at least take it while minimizing side effects and health issues. You know, keeping your cholesterol in check, inflammatory markers in check, blood pressure down. And if you're very interested in fitness and, you know, like we know the reality, all these steroid bros are the ones making money.
Unfortunately. But what I would say to that is, where are the centenarians taking this stuff and doing it right? And how well do you have to know your shit to get
Well,
away with it? As
the
far as I'm concerned,
yeah,
like
the point I'm making though, it's entirely
yeah,
sensible to research this because if there is a possibility to like take steroids safely, and I don't mean safer, but actually safely, and or like everybody has their own kind of risk benefit analysis, right?
sure.
So if it's
I guess
safe by your standards and you're willing to take certain trade-offs and you can make an informed decision, you know, in which you think you can benefit your life the most, I think it's sensible to research this stuff. But, you know,
sure. I guess I would just
so far based on the research I've done, it's just not sensible for me to take steroids because I can't get a reliable, safe supply. I'll never know what I'm taking, if I'm taking is real or dangerous. And on top of that, like, even if I could get a hold of everything pharmaceutical grade, I knew everything, there are a lot of health risks, and I don't know if I actually want to take on those risks. So,
Right. So there's, even if you're well informed and you're getting the best quality stuff, there's still risks that may be beyond your control, and that's why it could be scary, right? And to add on to that point, I would say if you look at the golden era bodybuilders, a lot of them were taking very small doses of testosterone and a bit of Dianabol, and it was the best quality that they can get. And they only took it during their 20s to top it off. And yet the majority of these bodybuilders died in their 70s, some in their 80s, but we don't see long living bodybuilders in that community. And if anything, they were the last generation of bodybuilders who actually did it right. So in that pursuit, and imagine, like, nowadays your average influencer looks like these freaking guys to a certain extent. It's like we know they're fucking themselves like beyond repair. Like they're gonna have a difficult time living a long, healthy life. They're probably gonna have an average lifespan. And to that I would say that's pathetic because the average man is extremely unhealthy, obese, is on a bunch of medications, and yet you, who's supposed to be about fitness, is living the same or even a bit less. Like, to me, that's what blows
oh,
my
dude,
mind.
Sam
And
Sulek ain't gonna make it. He is living a lot
it's
less.
sad. It's
Yeah.
sad, man. And it's like I just I want I'm very I'd love to see like what happens if someone does everything right, quote unquote, but like really doing it right. Could they still make it to 100 years old? Are we gonna see a centenarian fitness population that are roided up? And my gut tells me that it's gonna be hard to see that, you know.
Yeah.
And if you care about maximizing your longevity, then it should be a no-brainer to avoid it, or at least maybe when you're older you can get on TRT, and if it affects your lifespan a little bit, then so be it, you know. But it's like I don't think you're gonna live as long as you can if you're on that stuff, and the damage, even if you start young, it'll still affect you later down the road, as proven in the golden era bodybuilders.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good segue into mental health, because there are a lot of mental health issues in the fitness space.
Oh yeah.
So I think we should start with like body dysmorphic disorder, body image issues, because like there's 14-year-olds going on tren. There's something wrong with their brain if they think it's a good idea to go on tren at 14.
you
Um,
know you know the problem is, Richard, they didn't grow up watching Dragon Ball Z like us. Because
maybe.
if they did, they would have that mindset like, I gotta fucking kill it. You know, I gotta punish my body, get up, defy the odds. Like, I'm gonna beat these people who are power levels ahead of me, you know?
I don't know.
But that's
Because
just
like
a side joke. But
I don't know how much media, like what type of media really plays into the whole steroid thing. Because yeah, I grew up watching Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Fist of the North Star, crap like that.
oh yeah.
I never really considered taking steroids when I was younger. Um, but a lot of dudes from like the 70s, 80s, I guess because it was legal back then, it was kind of a different culture, and it's like, oh, it's just like a supplement you take when you're, you know,
Yeah. But they kept quiet about it.
yeah.
They would either like deny or say nothing, but usually they just,
I think that's because
you
of
wouldn't hear
Weeder.
about it.
I'm pretty sure that's due to Joe Weeder. He
Right.
he told all the like bodybuilders to shut up about it, don't talk about it.
Right.
Um,
But and even though like you can argue they were being deceptive, quote unquote, like only they had access to that stuff. It wasn't widely available, and people actually thought like, oh, I could look like Arnold, you know. So they had very high standards, very unrealistic, of course, but they didn't even consider taking steroids. And they would often say, okay, it's because I need to train longer. I've already put in 10 years, but it's because I need 15 years, you know. So I think society was better off. Of course, now we have the internet. If things have blown out of proportion, but where it was just like TV
we know
based, or you
now.
watch a couple movies here and there, you see Arnold and Predator, it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah, we
you
know
know,
all the
the perception
secret.
was different.
Yeah,
That's it.
we know the
So when the
secret.
when the
It's the
veil
steroids.
when the veil's been lifted, it's like people want a taste of that, and they want to live what these guys did. You know?
Yeah, and like it's such a weird problem because your average everyday normie probably wants to look like Brad Pitt and Troy, which
Yeah, it's
is
doable.
it's doable. When you get into the like fitness space, okay, like now you're fucking looking at Chris Bumstead and shit. And even some of these smaller, bigger influencers, like there's Sam Sulek. A lot of dudes are super into Sam Sulek. There's that Togi dude. They're all on fucking gear, like Z's, like way back in the day. They're all on gear, and
Mhm.
like that's the goal. But we all know they're on steroids, so like, what do? Right? Do you just accept kind of being a normie, a mere human, uh, and being unsatisfied with your physique, or do you hop on steroids and try to actually give yourself a chance to get there?
The thing is, the younger generation is not aware of the past. They haven't looked at the bronze era bodybuilders, the silver era bodybuilders, where steroid use was basically not there. I mean, people will argue about this. Were they available in 1954? Were they using it? Was it in the 1930s? Regardless, we can say the majority were natural, and that is a realistic expectation and long-term goal if you train long enough, right? But the younger guys, all they're seeing is guys like Sam Sulek, right? And they know that, oh, I just got to take the SARMs to look like that, and it won't take me a decade. They don't want to hear that it's gonna take a long time, right? But I think they would also be surprised to know that certain figures like Ziz, that was a naturally obtainable physique.
Yeah, it was.
It's just that he first of all, he had awful genetics. He was very skinny starting off, a World of Warcraft nerd. So was I, by the way. And he just drugged his way up to get that physique, and he got there in a fraction of the time. But he also paid with it with his life. So it's like,
Apparently, the way he used drugs was kind of stupid. Like he went
yeah, bad
really overboard
combinations and
on aromatase inhibitors and shit.
yeah, but there's a lot of natural bodybuilders today who mog him into oblivion,
Yeah.
and it only took a decade to get to that point. So yeah, you can hop on roids and look a certain way after 3 years of training, but if you would have done 3 times the amount of training, and you're still not old, by the way, like you'll have your dream physique, and that's what should be talked about more often, especially if you're not going to make a living on this, and most
Well,
won't, even if they're on PEDs.
I don't know about dream physique. Like again, for your
Dream within
average,
reason, you know?
well, dream isn't necessarily reasonable, right? Because we have these fucked up standards now, where all of the dudes that are big in the fitness industry that everybody looks up to, especially these kids, like they're fucking Sam Sulek, they're Togi, they're I don't even know all
But
their
like,
fucking names.
do people? But are people actually that delusional that they think they're gonna look that way?
Well,
Because even when I was a kid, I knew I was never gonna look like that. I had certain physique goals like Greg
Well,
Plitt or
here's the
Scott
thing.
Herman.
You have to, because like all these kids are getting like if they start like their own YouTube channel or upload to Instagram and crap, and they're getting good gains that you'd expect for a natural lifter. Oh, you're skinny fat. Oh, you look like fucking shit. Oh, you have no bicep peak. Like, oh, you're not fucking shredded. Like you only have a
Yeah,
little bit of abs. You're fat. Like so they're seeing these people that are getting all this admiration that look fucking amazing. Like god tier genetics, steroids, they look like Dragon Ball Z characters. Then all
hmm
these insecure, fucking insane, warped, delusional assholes online who are probably trying to make up for their own insecurities by putting other people down
what it is.
are like going out of their way to say, "Oh, you're fucking weak and skinny. That's the only progress you made after 3 years. You fucking shit." And then
Yeah,
it just makes the situation even fucking worse.
yeah.
So
I guess you're right about that. It's the extreme standards that pollute what actually good physiques are. Like I'm friends with a guy, Sharif. I don't know if you know him, but one of his posts went viral. Uh, 13-year natural physique, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, yeah, you have a great natty physique. Absolutely. That's what you would expect. And you look at the comment section, it's all negative. Oh, that's all you look like after spending a decade plus of this? Like, You did yourself wrong. Your trainer bamboozled you. You don't know what you're doing. You should just give up on bodybuilding. All these things, and it's like these shit talkers are never gonna look like that for one. And if they actually did train long enough, they'd realize like it's hard to build a physique like that. But their mindset has been so polluted by what's out there that they've lost sight of what's truly obtainable. And that again, that's why I always bring it back to the old school greats, because that gives us a framework to work off. Like we know that like a Steve Reeves physique, that is something that is possible.
Yeah.
You know? And even these guys didn't even fulfill their natural potential. Steve even said it, like he artificially capped his physique at a certain point because he was satisfied with the overall symmetry that he was, that he had. So, and imagine this is back then when we lacked information about various programming methods and nutrition and all that, lacking equipment. So it's like, what if we combine the information of the past with all the best evidence of today and the decades of experience acquired additional? Like, what can we achieve? And we're kind of seeing that in the WMBF, crazy natural physiques that you would look at them like, are they actually natty? Like, but I would say the vast majority are, So I think if we just divert our attention to a different world, not the most popular fitness young influencer, that the consensus would change. But we need people to bring awareness to these greats.
I think
and that's
I
their
think
responsibility to do that.
yeah, I think there's a big problem in mindset with a lot of people, and it's probably like a biological thing. We are apes. We evolved from a common ancestor from like chimpanzees and shit. And we're very social. We're kind of wired to care what other people think. And I think for a lot of people, probably most people, that is extremely counterintuitive to your well-being. Especially when you get sucked into these weird niche communities like, bodybuilding. You're going to end up being pressured into wanting to look like, like Sam Sulik or Larry Wheels or some shit. And I mean, we have such weird standards now too. Like I benched 410. Most people were like, "Oh shit, that's amazing, as natural and everything." And like most normies are like, "Holy fuck, how can you even do that?"
Well, yeah.
But you still have fucking deranged lunatics
Fucking morons, man.
who are like,
First of all,
"That's not even fucking good." Like, so
bro, that's crazy as hell.
Yeah.
I think it took you 10 years to get it, about, like, or how long?
Well,
like, realistically,
I started training when I was about 15, and I started training seriously when I was 16. And like I've had issues with depression and shit, and we can talk more about like depression and how I cured it like later. So I was training off and on for, I'm 33 now, so I guess it's like 16, 17 years. But
okay.
for the like goal of reaching 405, I'd say like it's really been on the table for me, and I've really been trying to get to it for about 3 years.
Okay. And keep in mind that's not even your potential. You're capable of more, and it move easily considering the injuries you've had. And a lot of people won't even come back after that. Plus, you did it on a vegan diet.
Yeah.
And regardless, it's like the ultimate natural achievement. Like nobody's doing that. Like you go to gyms across the world, it's so rare. Even some enhanced people have trouble
Well,
with it.
look at
So
all
it's
the
like,
natty fitness influencers. Like, there's very, very
bro,
few. There's me, you,
I
but
just, dude, I find it funny how people talk a lot of shit, right, about veganism, about you, and it's like they're so much weaker and smaller. Like I don't think they understand. You have 20-inch arms.
yeah,
Like that's silver era.
yeah,
Upper
they're
tier
fucking
status.
big, dude. Look
It's
at this
fucking
shit.
massive.
Yeah,
And people could say what they want about your I think you're 270, right?
yeah. Well, I'm
But you're all
253 right now.
okay, dude. You're 6'3" at 250 pounds about. That's totally reasonable, assuming you're bare mode, which is what you are. And I don't see a fat guy. So
Yeah,
it's like, do they not understand that you're taller and carrying a lot of muscle mass, and that's why you weigh the way you are? And those are fucking impressive looking arms,
yeah.
with that it's muscle. So it's like they only talk shit because you're vegan and they don't like who you are. But at the end of the day, you bench fucking 4 plates, and none of these people are doing it.
Yeah.
They're all intermediate lifters with like a 275 one rep max bench or 315, and they're bulked up. And it's like, you're bulked up too, motherfucker,
Yeah.
but you're not putting up the numbers. And it's like, it's going to take, for a lot of people, it might take 10 years to bench 4 or 5, or maybe they'll never get it. And I would reckon that's the case, you know? It took me like,
It's extremely
let
hard.
me
Extremely
do the math
hard.
on that. Yeah, it took me like 8 years to do it. And I have pretty good leverages for it as well, you know? And I did everything in my power. So it's like, do these guys actually think they're going to hit it? Like, fuck. The standards are really...
like, so
yeah.
you have these weird communities where, like, the standard is, okay, well, I don't consider what you do as impressive unless you're a, like, national or international level power lifter who's, like, a genetic freak on steroids. And then you have all these idiots who have developed the same insecurity, and the way of them coping with that insecurity is to put other people down. So when you're in a community like this, you don't want to fit in. You don't want to be a part of it. And like by fit in, I mean, you don't want to actually internalize what these people are saying and be like really present with these people. It's fine to interact with these idiots, like I have to. It's my job. But don't care what anybody thinks. And this ties into how I cured my depression. I've had lifelong suicidal depression. I almost killed myself when I was about 6 years old, and I've nearly attempted suicide, many times since then. Preferred method of suicide was like jumping off a tall building or something. So anytime I was across a bridge or really high up on a building, I've always wanted to leap. But I experimented with taking magic mushrooms a few years ago. The reason was because I heard they can help with depression, and they can also help with like creativity and stuff. So I started taking them. I had some like really interesting experiences. I've learned a lot from them. But I moved to Ottawa recently, and there's a mushroom dispensary near me. And mushrooms in Canada have a weird pseudo-legal status. They have the same kind of legal status as marijuana did before it got officially legalized. So you can literally walk up to stores in Canada that sell mushrooms. I got penis envy mushrooms. That's the strain. And I had like the most insane fucking trip. I bought from this dispensary twice. And the first time I took the mushrooms from that dispensary, I fully internalized nihilism. I've been a nihilist for a while. I've known there's no meaning to anything. The only meaning that exists only exists within your mind. It's a meaning you create. Anything can be meaningful to you. Farts can be meaningful to you, but it's not objectively meaningful. I know there's no 0.20 of this. It's just like a stupid game. We're all going to die. Nothing matters. But I fully internalized that when I was on mushrooms. I left my body. I saw the universe, and I just saw I just saw everything. I saw life, death, the full cycle of everything. I just saw the entire world from this outside perspective, where I just had no ego. I had no expectations from anybody. I didn't feel like I had to live up to anybody else's expectations. And I just saw the world for what it is. A stupid, pointless joke. What is this? The idea that we even exist is just crazy. How are we even here? Why is there not just a black nothingness? But for whatever reason, consciousness arose. There's matter in the universe clanging into each other, and to make things worse, Like, there are minds just bouncing off of one another, fighting over bullshit. And, like, for what? There's no meaning to any of it. We get angry, we get pissed off, we feel sad. For what fucking reason? Life is just a fucking joke that's going to end eventually. No one's going to live forever. All of the, like, pain and fear and suffering and all this bullshit and happiness and love and joy you felt, it's all going to end. There's no afterlife. You're just fucking dead, and it's like tears in the fucking rain. It's just gone. So if we're going to exist, what, like, why feel any of this? Why get angry? Why get mad? Why get sad? We exist for our own benefit. That's ultimately why. Like, there's no point to any of it. There's no end goal. There's no grand achievement that there's no, you don't do anything in life where, it's like a video game where, oh, you beat the game, you get the big achievement, you unlock crap. There's nothing like that in life. You just die. And I saw it. I saw it for myself. And it was so freeing just actually internalizing it, that nothing fucking matters. And when you know nothing matters and you feel nothing matters, anything anybody says to you, you can just brush off. Like, there's no expectation. You can just do things for your own benefit, right? Because if you're seeing fucking assholes online talk shit about, oh, your physique sucks, you're fat, and 10 years of lifting, who cares? I'm lifting for my own benefit. I do all these things for my own, and I wish more people knew that, like, especially these fucking kids that are going on steroids. We're these weird ape-like creatures that are probably manipulated by our biology to kind of be wired to think a certain way. We need to sort of try to get higher up in the dominance hierarchy in our social group. And a way of doing that in this community is being bigger, stronger, taking steroids, posting on Instagram. And if you just realized it doesn't matter, no one matters, you don't matter, their opinions don't matter, your life doesn't matter, well, why are you existing? Just fundamentally, why do you exist? Why don't you just jump off a bridge? It's because you want to benefit from existing. There's love and happiness and joy in this world, and you can have all of that right at your fingertips anytime you want it. If you just didn't care about any of these fucking assholes dragging you down.
Wow. That's deep right there. And I'm glad that this cured your depression. You would think that different measures would need to be taken, but I guess it's just the acceptance of the inevitable and embracing a stoic philosophy, if you will.
Yeah, I
So
would
maybe
consider
people should do
myself
more
a stoic.
a stoic nihilist. I guess that's one way to look at it, right? So maybe people should do more research into that.
It is
But
the way to look at it. Nihilism is just the truth. It's not just a way of thinking. It just is the truth. If anybody thinks there's meaning, objective meaning in the universe, make an argument for it. It's impossible. No one's ever been able to make an argument for it. It's just the truth. Nothing matters, not your suffering, not your happiness, not your life, not anybody else's life. Nothing matters. Everything around you is going to die and be destroyed. You're going to die, your family's going to die, your friends are going to die, everyone you know is going to die. The earth you're living on is going to get fucking destroyed. It's going to get swallowed up by the sun eventually.
we know what's
Eventually,
going to happen.
we're just going to have black holes in the universe emitting, like, Hawking radiation, and that's it.
Yeah. So
So,
that's
what do
why
you think you're going to achieve in your life? Like, what meaning are you going to achieve in your life? Everyone is going to fucking die. Everything is going to be gone. eventually there's nothing. There's going to be nothing but Hawking
Yeah.
radiation
So there's
traveling infinitely through space.
there's like two ways of looking at that. Either you let that make you go crazy and you just kill yourself and that's it, or you embrace the darkness and you're like, you know what, fuck everybody. I'm gonna walk my own path, do what I believe is right, and be freed of
Well,
all the
yeah,
pressure,
and
which is
that
ultimately just people, projecting their own insecurities.
yeah, and that brings
And what
me
I could,
to the second mushroom trip I had. 2 weeks later, I
yeah,
did a
can
mushroom
I just
trip.
say one thing
Yeah, go ahead.
additional before you mention that? We see fitness influencers dying all the time, right? And then you'll see some rest in peace videos coming out. Oh, he was such a great person. He impacted my life. He inspired me to build my body, whatever. And you'll see these videos roll around for like a week. And then some of the late bloomers will have theirs 2 weeks later. And then a month later, it's kind of quiet. Another month passes by. It's basically done. You never hear that influencer's name ever again until a year has passed after their death. And then everyone does like a throwback. Oh, remember him? But with enough time, it's like it's a new generation, and that person has been forgotten.
Yep.
And so, like, we're talking about people who were massive in this industry. Like the biggest example I could think of was Greg Plitt. His expos were like, you've been to fitness expos when you see lineups, right? This guy, he basically had like a whole seminar section to himself. Everyone loved him to death. He was like the model to be. And he was inspirational. He gave some of the best speeches. He inspired me. And after he passed away, you would see, actually, he lasted longer than others in terms of the legacy. People would release compilations of him for months, and even to this day, some people are still doing it. But overall, he's kind of been forgotten in this space, and none of the younger people know who he is. Some of the guys who are a little bit younger than me as well don't know, and you just don't hear his name being spoken of anymore. And it's like when I release a clip of him, guys are like, "Oh, who's that? Is he still alive?" And it's like, you know. So if someone like that, who had so much of an impact, could be forgotten, then what are you doing taking a bunch of steroids to appease a bunch of people who give zero fucks about you and who will forget about you quickly? Like we're seeing this with John Meadows right now. We're seeing this with that guy, Joe Lindler, right? We saw with Dallas McCarver. We saw with Rich Piana. We have endless lists of bodybuilders that even passed away during COVID. 2020 was not that long ago. So you're telling me that in 4 years, everyone doesn't care. So if we know this to be true, and that most fitness influencers don't even have a long career in this game, they might last 5 years and they're out, why are you going to sacrifice your life and fuck up your mental health over this stuff? And even care, like let alone the drug use stuff, even care about what others have to say about your physique and your strength as it pertains to your goals. So I just
Yeah,
wanted to throw that in.
and what's funny is Greg Plitt died because he thought he could outrun a train.
Yeah.
It's possible that steroids put him in that delusional state. Steroids do make you have delusional thoughts. There's also that other young kid who he died in a motorcycle accident. I think he got a
Oh,
Honda. What was his
yeah,
name?
you had a shitty bike
Yeah,
without the traction.
he had a Honda CBR 1000 RR. It was an older model from like the early 2000s, no traction control. I don't think he changed the tires on it, and he was riding in the rain, going super fucking fast. That, like, again, steroids, like just being young and stupid does that, but steroids, again, they do change your brain chemistry to make you kind of think more irrationally and take bigger risks.
Yeah.
Um, but
And
yeah,
then it says it can even lower your IQ by a couple
yeah,
points. I
yeah,
believe that's the main reason why Greg Knuckles has never considered them.
yeah.
Not
And
even
Mike
about the
Israetel has talked
health, the
about that
bodies.
too.
Yeah. So that's scary in itself.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably not too bright riding a 1000 cc sport bike, like 150 horsepower with old tires, no traction control in the fucking rain, going 100 miles per hour in a 60. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, some people just they're unaware. Like I'm not a car guy, but I would at least do my research to make sure that I was protected.
yeah,
You know. So I don't know, but a lot of people are risk takers in general. Like you said, young and dumb, and they don't look at this game long term, and that's also why they're afraid of the natty lifestyle because they don't see themselves like they don't recognize the fact that they could be training for decades. And it's like, if you're not going to quit, why are you hopping on stuff? So it all goes back to the same thing: being impatient and not accepting where you stand.
But again, it comes back to the whole like peer pressure thing and like insecurity and getting pressured by this community to go on. The second mushroom trip I had a very similar experience.
One second, man. Do you mind if I just take a piss real
Yeah,
quick?
sure, no
I've been
problem.
holding it in.
I'll
All right, thank you.
I'll take a piss too. All right,
Excellent.
we'll be right back.
All right.
Oh my god. Yeah,
Love to see the animals in the background.
yeah, and they're
Especially
all
the cat.
vegan. Cat's vegan,
Yeah.
dog's vegan, rabbits are vegan. Yeah, such a good boy. Yeah, so
Yeah, so your second trip.
so the second trip, very similar experience. I had that same sort of internalization of nihilism where I was like kind of out of my body and I just saw the meaningless in the world. And I was just like wondering if there's no point to anything, like if all this is stupid, like why am I suffering? Like why am I so depressed? And I realized, like, that's a good question. Why would I be? And it's like I saw these two doors in front of me, and I realized it's just a choice. It's all a mindset. There's nothing external that can actually force your mind to think a certain way or perceive things in a certain way or put your mind in a certain state. You have ultimate control of your mind. And if you're aware of like the truth, if you're just aware that nothing matters, if you get rid of all these stupid expectations that other people put on you, if you realize that you actually have a choice in how you feel, then the choice is given to you. I think a lot of people, and I had this assumption too, like I'm just depressed. I've always been depressed. There's this kind of pervasive idea that, there's certain circumstances that will make you depressed, like if you're not exercising, if you're not eating well, if you're not socializing, like all those things cause depression. They can definitely contribute, and there's an association with these things in depression, but ultimately you are in ultimate control of your mind. And you can always perceive things from either a glass half empty or glass half full mindset.
Yeah.
If you lose a leg and you can't train anymore or something, or if you lose money, you can think, ah, fuck, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do things I enjoy, I have less money,
What can
fuck
you
my
do?
life. Or you could look at it, I still have 2 arms, I still have 1 leg, I can still walk, maybe I need a cane, but I can just go outside, enjoy life just like everybody else can. I don't need, like, again, like some of these things, like, getting to a 405 bench, some things that we really want, like, why do we even want them? Is it something that's intrinsic to us where we just want that? Or are these like expectations that have been put on us where we have to be better? We have to climb like a dominance hierarchy. So you can enjoy things for sure. You can enjoy beating people. It's fun to be competitive, but you just don't need that to be happy because ultimately none of it matters. And the only reason we choose to exist is to benefit from existing. So if you're just miserating over your own life and just focusing on all these negative emotions, you can just put an end to it. Like in my mushroom trip, I was literally saying out loud, I streamed it. You can actually watch it on my channel. I was saying,
When was this?
this was like 3 months ago, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
3-4 months ago. And I literally said out loud, I'm depressed and I'm angry, but I'm angry that I'm angry, and it makes me more angry. And that's a chain of thought that you have control over.
Sure.
It's we're always going to have ups, like little ups and downs. Obviously, if a mosquito bites you, you're like, God damn it, but it's you don't have to miserate over anything. You don't have to be, God
Yeah.
damn mosquito bite. Fuck, I hate being angry. Shit, now I'm in a bad fucking mood. Right?
Yeah.
We had like your mind is the only space in which you have complete and utter control. There like a meteor could hit you, a runaway bus could hit you, tire could, fly off a truck, kill
Yes.
you. There's so many different things that you just have no control over, but your mind is a space where you have complete and absolute control.
Yeah.
And it
Assuming
was,
you're not a vegetable.
yeah, yeah,
That's basically the only circumstance, or you've been drugged up in some kind of way where you've lost autonomy, right?
yeah,
But if you're like fully there and you're able to think, as long as you can think, then you can make a choice.
yeah,
And you might as
and
well pick the one that's more favorable to your
yeah,
benefit, that which is positive, that's not going to lead you down
and
a downward spiral over meaningless shit.
and after realizing that, I actually visualized it. I saw it when I was in this mushroom trip. I saw this big, dark, rainy lake, and I saw raindrops falling down into the water, and the raindrops would create these ripples, and these other raindrops would create other ripples, and these ripples would interact with one another and create more turbulence. And I saw that as like people. Like people will argue with each other, start shit, like, Karens will start fights, people cut you off on the road, and, like people just get angry and fight with each other, and they create all this turbulence in their mind because they let these ripples, just bounce into them and then create more ripples. And then I saw this rock sticking up out of the water, and the ripples would bounce onto the rock and then just bounce off. Like the rock was undisturbed by all these ripples,
Mhm.
and the rock can be your mind. Anybody
Yeah.
who is bothering you, trying to pressure you into doing certain things, trying to get you to do steroids, all this weird social media shit that's trying to convince you that you don't look good enough, you need to take steroids, you need to do certain things. All these people who talk shit online, who are like, you're fat, you're ugly, you're weak, you're stupid. They're all ripples, and if you're a rock, they will just bounce right off of you. Again,
Damn right.
absolutely nothing matters. And the only reason we continue to exist is to benefit from existing. So why would you let these little stupid ripples, you know, hit you? And like, why would you make yourself another ripple? All of this can just bounce off. You don't have to give a shit about any of this. And you can just make decisions that are entirely for your own benefit.
Yeah. You're cultivating a positive mindset out of a harsh conclusion. And that's the freeing aspect of it. I mean, the metaphors are interesting. You got to that conclusion through using mushrooms, but it applies regardless. And a lot of people have spoken about this through the ages. So I think that's generally correct. And I think, again, redirecting people to Stoicism would be a good way to start learning more about this stuff.
Well, that's one of the like tenets of Stoicism, just control over your mind, control over
It's exactly
yourself.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would tell people to, read into those works, and also the classic book, As a Man Thinketh, because that's essentially what it goes back to. You are what you'll become what you think of. Whatever is constantly in your mind, that's who you'll be. And
Yeah.
it can be negative or positive. The body doesn't care.
Yeah. It's all up to you how you think, how you take things, and whether or not you choose to be affected by anything you see. Advertisements, social media, comment section, stupid Karens who are trying to start shit and threaten to call the cops. All of it,
Yeah.
in Buddhism, there's a story about Siddhartha trying to
Yeah.
preach to people about anger. and spirituality and all this shit. There was a guy who came up to him, started yelling, you're just full of shit. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're an idiot. And then Siddhartha said, anger is like a gift. And the guy said, what do you mean by that? And he said, if you were to give me a gift and I said, no, I don't want it, I wouldn't have the gift. It would be yours. You've come here with anger, screaming at me, trying to make me angry, and I'm just refusing to be angry. I'm not accepting that gift. And here you are, angry, pissed off, and I'm just fine. And as the story goes, this guy actually realized he knew what he was talking about, and he adopted Buddhism. But there's a lot of overlap between Buddhism, nihilism, and Stoicism.
Yeah, but that's the best way to react in general. When someone's coming at you hard, don't match that energy. Stay composed, do you, and you'll actually find that the other person will calm down, and then you can actually have some dialogue, and you'll realize like what you were fighting for initially was fucking meaningless, you know? So,
well, more fundamentally, it's all meaningless. We exist to benefit from existing. And anytime you're feeling a certain way, you should ask yourself, am I benefiting from feeling this way? Am I benefiting from looking at something in a certain way? Am I benefiting to reacting to something in a certain way?
Yeah.
It's all fundamentally your choice, and you have complete control over your own mind.
And most times, even when something is really negative, you can still think of something positive that will come out of that.
Yeah.
Like in the case you mentioned before, a motorcycle accident, right? Your legs don't work anymore. All right. Well, in the fitness context, now you could be the best bench bro of all time.
Yeah.
You know, you'll have the best pound for pound strength. Yeah, you can't walk, but you're going to have a big ass bench. You can still say that's depressing in its own right, but you're still making a conscious decision to move forward and keep your head up high, given all those odds.
It's all meaningless anyway. It's all pointless. Whether you have legs or not, the universe is going to be completely destroyed, and there will be nothing but Hawking radiation extending for eternity. Not a single mind is going to be present to care about what you have done, who you were. It's all pointless. And the only thing you can do is get whatever you can out of life. Just enjoy it. All the experiences, all the laugh, joy, love, and you can just eliminate all that suffering just by accepting the reality. None of this matters. And you can just decide to be happy and make decisions that benefit you.
Would you say this can happen in an instant? Like once you went through these experiences, like how has that affected like your medication use? Have you stopped taking that altogether?
Yeah,
like,
so I was on
this?
Yeah, so I was on a variety of medications, and they were switching for a while. I was on an NDRI, an SNDRI, and an SSRI, I think all at the same time. The psychiatrist I was talking to put me on got me down to two medications. One's an SSRI, another one was an antipsychotic. Stopped taking them completely after that mushroom trip, and again for the last 3-4 months completely unmedicated, and mental health is being just perfect.
That's amazing. So this is the best you felt in years, and all it took was a realization, like confirming your beliefs, but in a level that you truly accept.
Well, it's internalizing them.
Like
I knew
really,
it was true,
in you.
But I didn't understand it. I didn't feel it.
Right. So it's about connecting like the way you felt with the rational side, because you know, you've been well versed on this stuff. You've been even debating it for years, right? But I guess you didn't feel it, quote unquote. But after that trip you did?
It's kind of like it's an internalization. It's sort of like, you know, you could read repair manuals on any car. You can read it front to back, study it perfectly, and you might not be able to repair a car. You have to have that kind of experience firsthand to really know what you're doing,
like
to see things for yourself.
Basically.
Yeah, you can know something, but there's like a deeper knowing where you just fully internalize that, and you can see it and visualize it perfectly in your mind.
I guess if I can make a comparison, it's as if like you're a teenager and you read a bunch of self-help books and now you try to be a coach, a life coach, but you have no life experience on anything. You've yet to work, you've yet to contribute to society in any meaningful way, but it's all in your head. You think you know things until you get into the trenches, and now you start experiencing these lessons that you read in the book, and now you put two and two together. So even though like you can rationally get it, it's like you wouldn't be able to really teach it effectively, and you don't really grasp it. Like it's just a concept, you know? So I
Yeah.
guess I would make that it's similar here,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
with something grander, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, it gave me an interesting perspective on some people who've been
Who've been mean towards you.
supposedly struggling with mental health. There's Connor Murphy. He's
Yeah, but he didn't he get worse after he went through those things? Like I think he never
well,
recovered.
he was taking like ayahuasca every single day. He got like addicted to psychedelics. He was in this weird manic state. Apparently he got over it. I don't think he's taking psychedelics anymore, at least not regularly like he used to, but a lot of people still think he's like a weird guy. And he is kind of weird.
Yeah,
But
but like he didn't used to be that way. Like there was some they say like he broke his brain. Like he's never truly recovered, you know?
yeah, I kind of understand his perspective a little more, I think. He might have had sort of a similar idea to me, and he was kind of alluding to it. I talked to him directly, and
Okay.
he had this like idea of solipsism where we are all God, like our world is created in our mind,
Yeah.
and our mind has like decided to put us in this place in this moment so we can experience all these different things. He was saying like we share all one mind and like we are our own gods. From that it's not necessarily wrong. Um it it may not be true that we share a mind. It may not be true that like we're gods and we've constructed our own universe. But again, at the end of the day, either way, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think he sees
I think
life from a perspective of this is just a big fat joke and it's stupid and it doesn't matter and I'm just going to do my thing. And it might seem kind of scary to people where, somebody might self-destruct. Like he was taking a lot of different drugs. He wasn't eating properly. Like he did that 30-day like
yeah, yeah.
not eating
Fast.
thing. I don't know what the hell happened in Thailand, but like he almost died from getting slashed open. He's
Mm.
not sharing the story. He's claiming he didn't attack his girlfriend. Who knows? He didn't get arrested, but
No
when
idea.
when people see somebody kind of self-destructing like that, acting really bizarre, they think there's something wrong with them. There might not necessarily be. He may just be handling the truth a little differently than most people. And again, it
Well,
doesn't
that's
matter. It doesn't matter if you live or die or if
that's what I was saying before. Like it all depends. Like everyone's gonna handle things differently.
yeah.
Like the way you're describing this, it doesn't matter, but you actually came out with a positive realization that you don't have to fear judgment and all these things anymore. Whereas some people might just be like, fuck this, I'm jumping off a building right now. And Connor seems to
It
have
wouldn't
taken his
matter either
own
way.
weird twist on that. Yeah, but regardless, as it pertains to, benefiting the individual in this time frame that we do have, like some outcomes are better, I would say. And I think you took a healthier approach given this darkness that you've
There
described,
again, when we're saying something that's better, that's a normative claim, and that's a subjective perspective that
Sure.
we're applying to something when it doesn't matter. Like nothing matters. And when you see people self-destructing like that, I don't think Connor's actually crazy. I think he is just taking some of this information in a different way than most people would. And he's doing his own thing. And, I think at
There's a
the end of the
perspective for
day,
everything.
yeah, I think at the end of the day, just show people love, you know.
Yep.
That's all you can
I
do.
think,
We want to benefit from existing, and I think a more loving kind of world where we're just nice to each other, we're nice to animals, and we don't hurt each other. That's just better world. But if somebody wants to, self destruct, kind of like Connor does, he's gonna do what he's gonna do. But I don't think he's actually crazy like people think.
well, some of the greatest minds, people have considered them to be crazy, and oftentimes they're creative individuals with high IQs. I think there was one guy, he had a 200 IQ, and he was coming out with these ridiculous claims that everyone was like, "What the fuck are you even saying?" So that's why they want to test, like, does he have mental problems? And once they found out how smart he was, like, they shut up real fast. But I guess they were just like, okay, that's how he thinks. So we all reach different conclusions, and it is what it is, right? It's neither good or bad, but at the end of the day, let's what's best for the world, and ultimately, this, I guess, this ties back into the whole vegan thing. Yeah, let's show love, let's show compassion, let's look at things as objectively as we can, and just do that regardless of how we feel. And yeah, everything will be all right.
Yeah, fundamentally, we all want to benefit from living, and the way to do that is to create a vegan world where people are nice to each other, nice to animals, good to themselves, and we can benefit from existing for as long as we can.
That's it.
But
The
anything
longer
else
we're
you wanted
here,
to talk about or bring up?
I think we're good. We talked a lot. I mean, we covered everything: health, ethics, you name it, programming. I guess I could have done a better job on the ethical side because we had just started talking. But no, I think you explained things well on your end. And if you had any more questions about my journey towards veganism or any weird beliefs that I might have about health, like, I'd be open to responding to that. But otherwise, I think we've done a
Yeah.
good job, and I hope
Like
you
you do
yours.
you have you seen any of my debates?
I've seen a lot of your debates
Yeah, you hold the view that animals should have the same rights as human beings. Like that's the
for the most part. Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
yeah,
as long as they're trade equalized. I'm not saying like cats
yeah,
should be
yeah.
able to
Like you,
vote.
you, you talk about name the trait, and I've seen, like, what if you were to put a human brain into like a pig or something. Like, I've seen your arguments, and to me they make sense.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I think we're on the same page there.
We
Yeah,
are on the
I
same page. I'm just not as articulate as
yeah.
explaining them. Like, you've had a lot of experience doing this. It's all in my head. Like, I know, like, having seen your material, I'm very familiar with it. I just I'm not good at teaching it, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Not ethically. Like, nutrition stuff, I feel quite confident in. Like, you could put me on the spot and I'll explain what I know. But the ethics stuff, it's like I know it, but I have a hard time, like, just saying it out loud.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, but I'm glad you've actually come to the dark side and become vegan. I'd like to see you post some more like vegan related content, like just
I'd
meals,
like
stuff
to.
like that. That'd be
I,
cool.
I will. I think
And
it's about time to start
yeah,
making some real
and
content.
yeah, maybe some point in the future we can do like a lifting collab or some shit. That'd be cool.
Ben, two natty vegans benching over
Yeah,
4 plates. That would be sick.
yeah. I got a
So
big
let me.
basement down
Yeah,
here. You can come over, or I could come over to you. We're pretty close.
sure, sure. Yeah, I'm in Quebec. It's not a it's like a 2 hour drive, And yeah, I'm working, like we said before. I'm working to surpass my 405 bench, and I'm doing this on a vegan diet, and I plan to stay lean, and I'm doing this for life. So
Nice.
I'm fully invested into this. I'm not going back. This is the way. I wish I did it sooner, and I always try to understand where someone else is coming from and lead them down this path, because I know that it's win-win in every possible way. And even if they don't go vegan 100%, if they're at least 80% plant-based, I've at least helped them and the animals in some kind of way. And we are making a difference. We do have a choice, you know. So why not make, like you said before, we all make decisions, right? So why not make the decision that is overall the best, given all these fucked up circumstances and whatever. And it's truly horrific what we do to these animals. And saying that it's not our fault. Like, of course, we didn't put these systems in place, but we can choose to support it.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. And if you acknowledge that it's morally wrong, like you don't like factory farming, you don't even like killing these animals in general, and you know that you can live a long, healthy life, you can strive, you can be the best version of yourself, then why the hell would you do it? Why would you even entertain it periodically? It is completely unnecessary. And
Yeah.
I wish I knew this further. I wish I would have not just been plant-based, quote unquote. I wish I would have done it all the way, because then, you know, I would have been able to make even more of a difference instead of just dabbling on it and
And
being on
I
the
mean,
fence.
you just feel better, and it's not just from the effect of the food being healthier. There's just something in the core of your being that just feels better knowing you're doing the
Like,
right thing.
you know, my sister has 4 cats, and I love cats. They're my favorite animal. And when I go over to her place, I'm looking at them like, huh, I don't eat, you know, I don't eat you, but in general, I don't eat your friends. I don't eat animals. I can be friends with you,
Yeah.
you know?
And you
And
can
I
have
apply
vegan
that
cats,
mindset
by
to
the
all
way.
animals,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool because I
Yeah.
think you can give cats can develop heart disease if you give them too much of a high fat
Saturated
diet.
fat.
That's
Yeah.
saturated fat. So that's crazy as hell. You know, so even that, there's so many options nowadays. We live in 2024. Like, there's no excuses. Even the meat alternative tastes just as good. Actually, the chicken is scary. Like, dude, sometimes, man, like I'm eating like a vegan burger and I have to double check this shit. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I took a bite out of it, but it's legit.
Yeah.
So you have options when you go to gatherings. No one's gonna care. Honestly, people aren't even gonna look at you eat in the first place. They're too focused. People are so selfish that they won't even realize what you're doing. So why are you trying to? Because that's a big reason, right? Peer pressure. I want to fit in, but it's like they don't care regardless. Bring your own thing, and everything's gonna be just fine. You could talk about other stuff, you know.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I'd like to see more people in the fitness industry, more lifters go vegan, and
Well, I think
hopefully,
it.
slowly but surely, we'll convert some people. Who
I,
knows? Maybe
I think the
Revival
way.
Fitness will eventually.
Well, look, with him, I genuinely like just lower your saturated fat intake, and you're gonna see tremendous health improvements. Okay, if he wants to go vegan, great. I don't think he will because of ethical reasons, but you know, I think for this to work in our fitness world, we need to prove that you can be jacked, strong, fit, all that. Because also, like, we have Olympic gold medalists who are vegan now,
Yep.
and that's wonderful to see. But a lot of them are competing in endurance sports, which is wonderful. I can't do what they do, right? And most of the shit talkers can't either, right? But I want to see like actual strength athletes, you know, like Patrick Baboumian was a good example. I want to see more guys like him. I
Yeah.
want to see powerlifters, bodybuilders. Of course, there's been Mr. Universe, and you know we have our little clique. You know, we got like the Brian Turner, the Nimai Delgado, and Simnit, and all these dudes. And I hope to be in that camp as well. Like when people mention veganism, I want them to think about me, right? And not what I used to eat back in the day or when I was just plant based or whatever, right? So I think it's about growing this Avengers team and showing like you can really thrive. You can have the blood work to prove it. You can be jacked as a motherfucker. You can be strong. And most importantly, you could do it while being natty. Because the moment you introduce drugs into the mix, they're like, oh, but you only look like that because of steroids. It's not because of the vegan diet. So I think if we can really isolate it, you know, and then show people that we've thought this through, like from a moral standpoint and health standpoint, and we have the data to back it up, which we certainly do. It's on our side, not the conspiracy side of animal-based diets. Then I think we're gonna go a long way. But I really believe, man, we need tougher vegans for one, and we need them to have better physiques, or else they're not gonna listen to us. If I came in
Yeah.
looking scrawny, they're just gonna dismiss us.
Yeah.
So I think that's where like benching 4 plates and like that's a hell of a flex, man. Like, oh yeah, you're weaker than a vegan. It's
Yep.
it's it's great. I love it. So
All right, man. Where can people find you if they're not familiar with you?
yeah, so they could find me on the Alex Leonidas YouTube page or on Instagram, Alex Leonidas official, or my website, which is again my name.
All right,
And
sweet
they
man.
can DM
Thanks for
me or
the
comment. Yeah,
yeah. Thanks for the chat, dude. And maybe we'll
great
do
chatting
a
with you.
workout collab soon.
That would be sick. Let me get my strength back up, and then let's put up some 4 plates. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Take care, dude.
awesome. Take care, man.